I met Rain when she was dancing in the streets of Seattle, unfettered and free, arms flung out wide as she spun around and tossed her head back, giggling as she twirled. It was pouring down with rain. I remember it well. She made me smile and forget about everything I was thinking at that moment. I thought I glimpsed a fairy flitting between flowers. She had short pixie-style blonde hair. People walked by her, hidden under the safety of their umbrellas, some giving her the side-eye, but most avoiding eye contact, so they didn't get pulled into her craziness. The girl was least bothered about the fact whether someone was watching her or not. She was in her own world. The dancing girl took a long turn and collided with my chest. She giggled and looked at me curiously. I felt that her sparkling eyes were looking inside me somehow. She offered me a hand and asked, "Dance with me, kind sir?" I looked around. I can't. Why not? For a start, it's raining hard, and there is no music, was the first lame excuse that came to my mind. She shook her head, as a mother does to a child. "Rain is a blessing, and not to be rained upon is not to be blessed," she said in a matter-of-factly tone. "And there is music. You just have to listen," she whispered, and she opened her arms to include everything around us. She took my hand and pulled me out of my shelter and into dance position without giving me time to think. "It's a waltz," she said with a wink. I'm not entirely sure why, but I decided to dance with her in the rain. Perhaps it was simply that she was beautiful. Perhaps because I had lived my entire life, letting what others might think of me take control of the way I acted. Maybe her madness was contagious. So we waltzed around and around, oblivious to anything except each other. When the music playing in Rain's head stopped, she kissed me on my cheek and said, "Thank you for the pleasure of your company, fine gentleman." And she curtsied. I shrugged, took a bow and answered, "The pleasure was all mine, my lady. Let me buy you a cup of coffee." I was soaking wet and shivering with cold. She smiled and took my arm. "I accept your invitation. Lead the way." We walked arm in arm to the nearest cafe. I sat there trying to dry myself off with some paper towels I got from the toilet. I must look like a bedraggled mess. "Not at all, you look lovely," she objected. We looked at each other long enough for it to get awkward. "Why do you like the rain so much?" She smiled at me and said, "I'll give you a hint. My name is Rain." Suddenly everything made sense. I am Rolf. Well, my real name is Rudolph, but everyone calls me Rolf. Nice to meet you. So, tell me, Rolf, do you like rain? That's a tricky question. Your name is Rain. Are you talking about yourself or the rain itself? She tilted her head to the side, curiosity evident in her expression. I suppose I could make it easy on you and say I like both. I am glad to hear it, Rain said, wringing the water out of her short hair. So what do you do for a living, Rolf? I am a digital technology and culture major, which is a fancy way of saying I want to start in web design and eventually tell other web designers what to do. Oh, and I want to be successful enough at it that I'm not working on porn websites. What about you? I am just living my life one day at a time like the rest of humankind. Rain and I talked and talked. She didn't seem to mind the water running down her forehead, cheeks, and dripping off her chin. She was into hiking and nature. We spent a lot of time exchanging stories about the outdoors and the places we visited. Rain had been in a lot of places all over the world. Compared to hers, my list was pathetically short. Apparently, she had never gone to college. When I told her I lived in Middletown, she told me she had heard about my hometown, but she had never been there. "You live in a charming small town. What are you doing here in Seattle?" she asked me. "Taking a seminar about cybersecurity. Now I'm heading back to Middletown." "You? Me? I don't have a fixed destination. I am enjoying my journey. Those mountain trails you told me about sound interesting, and I've never swum in a lake. I didn't think it was appropriate to mention that I couldn't swim at all. Can I tag along with you?" Rain quickly asked. "I'd love to spend a few days in Middletown. Sounds like a delightful place." It took me 1 nanosecond to make up my mind. Of course, that's how Rain entered my life. I've always been quiet and reserved, but not shy. I was happy to observe and listen to my social surroundings because I didn't know how to say my opinions out loud. The majority of my school reports had the terms quiet, nice, well-behaved, need to take part in the discussion. I had a rich, vibrant inner life from a young age, and I did not see anything wrong with it. I never felt the pressure to adopt that cool and aloof attitude that seemed to be pervasive among students. Instead, I was a perfectionist who would pile green vegetables on my lunch tray, held my hand high when the teacher asked a question, and who would craft 2 art projects, when I was only required to make one. School became a place for me to use my creativity productively. I may have been alone, but I was not lonely. I enjoyed my inner life without embarrassment, and to the greatest extent possible. However, others did not see it this way. My mother and I argued constantly over whether I was happy being alone. To a concerned, extroverted mother, there was no way I could have been happy without a bountiful group of friends behind me. As a result, I pushed myself to become louder, more giggly, and more outgoing. But even when I enjoyed socializing in certain contexts and environments, I still preferred to be alone. I really tried to date, but girls saw me as a friend material, not as a boyfriend. A new word was added to my description: safe. Do you have a girlfriend? I don't want a jealous girl chasing me with a knife because I stole her boyfriend. I snorted. That idea of a girl chasing another girl with a knife because of me was hilarious. I know I should have said something cool like, I am just dating and having a lot of fun right now with a smirk on my face, but that wasn't me. So I just said, you don't need to worry about any girlfriend. What about you? Any jealous boyfriend with a lot of muscles I should be worried about? Her face clouded for a second. Somehow I had touched a sensitive spot. Rain shook her head. I never had a steady boyfriend. I don't want to spend my life tied to one guy living in the same town surrounded by the same people. Her words made my heart sink. I intend to live my life to the fullest. I want to travel and visit all the corners of the world. I want a life of adventure. You should try it. Her words stung like a slap. Rain had pegged me right. Welcome to Middletown, Rain. Small town, big hearts. The mayor coined that motto. It's corny, but it's actually true. As soon as I laid eyes on the small town below us, I knew I'd found my new adventure. For how long? I didn't know. My time was always ticking. Rolf seemed to read my thoughts. I'm pretty sure you'll get bored soon. There is not much entertainment around for a woman of the world like you. I wouldn't be so sure about that. Small towns have their charm that lures us to enjoy the simpler, quieter things in life. Everything's slightly slower and more relaxed. Simple life, simple people. I could see he didn't like what I said. Is that how you see me? Simple? My lips curved into a smile. You? Of course not. I didn't mean to offend you. None taken. I knew Rolf thought I was just saying it for his benefit, but I truly believed he was special. I had become really good at reading people. He was not a simple guy, but a rather complex one. He was a good, decent guy with a lot of heart. He was caring and generous. He was smart, but didn't flaunt it. All his life he had played it safe and done the right thing, but I was sure he had an adventurous side. There is just one problem, Rain. You're never going to find an empty place. It's peak season. Everything is booked here, Rolf said, driving around Main Street. A place to stay? I thought I was going to stay with you, I said, making him blush. He looked really cute when he blushed. Ah, okay, sure. You can stay with me. I liked his charmingly naive style. Don't worry, Rolf. Your virtue is safe with me. I promise, I said, raising my right hand. He twisted his mouth at my words but said nothing till I laughed. Then he laughed with me. Can you take me to the lake? Of course we can go there in the morning. In the morning, why wait? Let's go now. I bet it's beautiful at night. Rolf looked at me. It was a look I had seen before. He was thinking I was crazy, but he was too much of a gentleman to say something. So he just shrugged, smiled at me, and nodded. I wanted to walk, but he insisted on going in his car. We reached there in no time. Rolf parked his car near the lake, and we made our way down to the water's edge, walking hand in hand. Well, here it is. The lake was like glass, and the calmness was broken only by the ripples the loons made, and the fish jumping up after large water bugs. It is breathtaking. Look at the beautiful reflection of the moon in the water, I said, absorbing everything. We stood on the wet sand before edging closer and letting the small waves break over our feet and ankles. It was cold, but at the same time it was refreshing and delicious. I could have stayed there all night, staring out into the darkening sky, inhaling the fresh air and reminding myself how lucky I was to be here. I pulled my skirt up, winding it around my fingers so it wouldn't get wet. The air was brisk and chill. Do you swim? I asked Rolf. No, I don't know how to swim. I was never cool enough to hang out at the beach like the other kids at school. I could tell Rolf was not feeling sorry for himself, but simply stating a fact. He was comfortable in his own skin. I sat on the cold sand and patted a spot on my side. Rolf quickly sat down and I rested my head on his shoulder. I almost forgot there were so many stars, I said. You can't see them in the big cities. Out here, without all the light pollution, You get a better picture of just how many other worlds, how many solar systems and galaxies there are in the universe, and how small we truly are. Rolf wrapped his sweater around my shoulders and looped an arm around me, drawing me close. How amazing is that on all the grains of sand? In all the universes, we somehow find ourselves here, Rolf whispered in the dark. I turned my head to look at him in surprise. That was beautiful. What? He asked, blushing again. I can be poetic too if I want. I smiled at him. I like this side of you. His cheek went a bright shade of red. Are you a season, reason, or a lifetime? I asked him. Come again? You said we found ourselves. The universe joined us. I am asking if I came into your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. You lost me there, he murmured thoughtfully. Well, someone comes into your life for a reason, when they come to assist you through a difficulty, to provide you with guidance and support, to aid you physically, emotionally, or spiritually, like a physical therapist that helps you to recover from an injury. Kind of. Sometimes is more subtle than that. A person you met by chance and helps you to make a difficult decision, or opened your eyes to something you were missing. Then, at some point, when the need has been met and the work is done, the person leaves. I get it, he said, moving his head up and down slowly. Some people just come for a season, I kept explaining to him. I had friends in whom I can confide. I had friends with whom I had a great deal of fun. I had friends who taught me important lessons about the world and myself. We enjoyed our time together immensely, but it was only for a season. Like a coworker you are close to, but then you change jobs and the relationship changes or vanishes. Something like that. Your best friend from high school or your college roommate fits in this category. I knew a lot of people during my travels, and I am still in touch with some of them, but our relationship is not what it once was. Have you met many men in your adventures around the world? I nodded and said nothing else because I suspected what he wanted to know. However, he insisted. Have you been close to many of those men? I let out a long sigh. Men could be so dense. Look, Rolf, I don't want to be rude, but I don't kiss and tell. What I do with my life is none of your business. You're right, I am sorry. I didn't mean to pry. It's okay. I just don't want you to get the idea that I have slept with a crowd of men. Let me tell you about Lucas. You don't have to if you don't want to. I want to. As I said, I don't want you to get the wrong idea about me. He was an Austrian guy I met on a train when I was backpacking through Europe. I stayed with his family. I became quite close with all of them. He and I shared a love of dance and spent a good deal of time together because he was a great dancer and gave me lessons in the Viennese waltz, a dance I had always wanted to learn. Rolf nodded slowly. I could tell he was jealous of a guy he never met, and that wasn't part of my life anymore. Males are such possessive creatures. He had a jealous blue eye, into which he seemed trying to put a friendly light. One of my favorite memories of Austria includes dancing a long Viennese waltz with Lucas down an almost empty train platform. Now it's your turn, I said, to change the subject. Think of someone who came into your life for a reason. Rolf was quiet, deep in thoughts. He paused, rubbing his chin. The first person that comes to my mind was Mr. Carpenter, my baseball coach in school. I thought I was a shit-hot baseball player and was heading towards the big leagues, but he soon dissuaded me of that idea. He didn't dance around the truth, and he didn't pander to kids or their parents. If a kid was good, he told them, and if a kid wasn't good, he told them that too. Turned out I was a crap player. We laughed at that. However, Mr. Carpenter refused to let me quit. The team needs you. You made a commitment, and you have to keep it. A good man always keeps his word. So instead of quitting, I stayed and coach pushed me, pushed everyone on the team, so that even though I was never going to be the baseball star I'd dreamed of, the team went on to win the premiership that year. Are you still in touch with him? Rolf shook his head. He died not long ago. Even so, I hadn't talked with him in ages. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you. You said people come to your life for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. Very few people come to your life for a lifetime, I said in a whisper. Rolf nodded. I could see in his eyes that he knew what I meant. Family fits into this category, he said. I nodded. Not every family, but yes, most of them. Some true good friends you can count with one hand. Those who had always been at your side in difficult times, that you both hold on to each other during both good and bad times. If you have people like that in your life, you are truly lucky. You're right, I gave him a sad smile. One of the prices you pay for your freedom is that you don't take roots. I grew up in a foster home. No one knew who my parents were. I belonged to nowhere and no one. It was a starry night and the stars twinkled, each trying to tell its own story. I could spend the entire night lying on the sand, talking to the stars. It wouldn't have been the first time that I slept on a beach. I inhaled the fresh air and reminded myself how lucky I was to be here and to be alive. I could feel Rolf lying at my side. There were good vibes between us. Rolf said, "I read once that a grain of sand on a beach represents just how big our planet is in comparison to the universe. And to think that we're each just a tiny speck of dust on that grain of sand. It shows you how small a part we play in everything." He was a smart guy, someone to look up to. "I can teach you to swim," I said all of a sudden. Maybe this was my reason to be here. At least enough, so you won't get into difficulties if you go in the water. I knew he was trying to look brave, but he shivered when he said, "I'll think about it." He looked cute with his eyebrows scrunched together and his cheeks all flushed with red. The next day we went to the lake. Rain was a force of nature. It was almost impossible to say no to her. I was afraid to go into the water, but the same impulse that drove me into dancing with her in the rain caused me to go into the lake. Rain grabbed my hand and we tiptoed into the cold water. The coolness wrapped around my toes and swallowed my ankles. I froze, a combination of the cold water and my fear making my muscles rigid. I swallowed as I stared out at the dark blue depths. In this particular spot, the lake was almost flat and completely smooth. I didn't want to look scared with Rain by my side. "How about for today's first lesson?" Rain suggested after a few moments. "I just teach you to float." "Okay," I agreed warily, letting her lead me deeper in. I drew in a deep breath, told myself to be brave. "Georgios taught me how to swim when I was in Greece. He was a lifeguard. You're safe with me." She met a lot of guys all over the world, I thought. Am I just another name in her list? I couldn't help but feel jealous of every guy that she had met. I shook my head, trying to get rid of these thoughts. We were not a couple. She was just a girl I met in the street and invited to my place. "Relax and lie back on the water. Lift your feet from the bottom," Rain coached me. It was hard to relax when my heart was hammering with fear. Soon, with Rain's gentle coaxing and her firm hands keeping hold of me at all times, I was able to float on my back and stared up at the blue sky. "You're doing well, Rolf. Don't move your arms and legs." I was breathing fast. My efforts were clumsy, but at least I was keeping my head above the water. On the way to the lake, Rain and I had visited a store at the mall, which she insisted was all she could afford. I had waited patiently as she tried on a variety of swimsuits before settling on a pink two-piece. It cut low over her breasts and then skimmed the top of her thighs. "Tell me about this guy, Georgios." I tried to make my voice sound casual and light. She rolled her eyes but answered anyway. "He was the person who taught me how to swim. He lives in Greece. I like to meet people wherever I go. I have never been afraid to talk to strangers. That's how I met some of the most wonderful and interesting people along the way." Why Rain brought up such strong feelings in me? I tried not to get jealous. I knew there was no reason or right for me to be jealous, but still, I couldn't shake the prickly feeling that came over me. The inexplicable feeling that I didn't like Lucas and I didn't like Georgios. I didn't like them at all, even though I'd never met any of them. The idea of some other guy touching Rain, kissing her, was bothering me. "You're floating now," Rain said, stretching my arms out, oblivious to my thoughts. "Doesn't it feel awesome looking up at the sky, feeling like you're part of something massive, huge like the lake?" "Yes, it is. I just don't want to be part of the lake permanently," I said nervously. "What if I drift into deeper water?" "Then I'll bring you back to safety," Rain reassured me. I tried to stand, but my feet couldn't find the bottom. I panicked and threw both arms around Rain's neck. We both sank down. When we emerged, she said in a calm but firm voice, "Rolf, you have to let go of me." I squeezed my arms tighter around her neck. "I can't. I'm way too scared." I looked down. I couldn't see the bottom of the lake from where I was floating. We were not far from the old pier. Why did I let Rain talk me into this? Perhaps she had used some of her pixie magic on me. Rain tried to extricate my fingers from around her neck, but I had her in a fierce hold. The cold water made her shiver. If I wasn't so scared, I would be enjoying having my body pressed against hers. Even so, I could feel my desire stirring. Again, Rain seemed to read my mind. She giggled, leaned forward, and kissed me, pushing herself against me firmly and laid on her back. Her legs were wrapped around my waist, and she pressed against me through the thin layers of our swimsuits. I relaxed immediately. I told you the key to floating is that you have to relax. You will be able to swim as long as you learn that, she purred, rubbing against me. How can I relax if I could sink to the bottom of the lake? I think doing this is helping you. She pressed against me again and giggled. I felt the tension rise. I am sorry. It's okay. I am actually flattered. She winked at me and splashed around playfully. I was still holding her, but not so firmly, and she was moving her arms and legs, swimming backward. Rain, this is a family beach, and I don't want to get in trouble for inappropriate behavior. Sheriff Thomas doesn't like it when people cross the line. I'm pretty sure we're not the first couple to enjoy the water together. Yeah, that's true, but most couples do it at night when no one is around. We were out in the water, and while there wasn't anyone nearby, there were plenty of people on the beach. Fine, spoil sport. You're not fun at all, she pouted. Even when she smiled at me when she said that. I could see she was disappointed. What was wrong with me? Why couldn't I be a free spirit like Rain? Reluctantly, Rain unhooked her legs from around my waist and eased back a little. I stood up and realized I could touch the bottom again. The pier was closer to us. I already taught you how to float. You can try it again, she said. I tried it and lost balance again. My fingernails dug into her arm in my attempt to keep my head above water. I got you, Rolf, she said, her voice calm and reassuring. She placed a hand on the back of my head to keep it above the water. I nodded and relaxed a little. She laughed. You're doing great. I tried to look at her, but when I turned my head, I lost my balance, sinking under the water and coming up spluttering. Her hands pushed me up so I wouldn't go under again. Ah, Rolf, you can't let yourself get distracted, she said with a laugh. Are you having fun with me almost drowning? I splashed her with water, which caused her to let go of me, and I immediately went under again, only to come up spluttering and coughing once more. You can't do that, she warned me, her eyes sparkling. You don't want me to let you go. No, I don't. I wound my arms around her neck and pulled myself up against her, her wet body slamming into mine. We slid together, the water sliding over our skin, as Rain tilted her head back, welcoming the kiss she knew was coming. I didn't waste a moment, pressing my mouth fully and firmly to hers, eliciting a low growl of pleasure from the back of her throat that made my pulse quicken. My tongue traced the seam of her lips before she opened for me, allowing me to explore her mouth. Despite the chill of the lake water, Rain was anything but cold. I have wanted to kiss you senselessly since we met, I said, trying to keep myself above the water. Kiss away, Rolf. She pulled me back in for another kiss, and this time, when I did finally let her go, I realized it was getting harder and harder to stay away from her. When we got home, we made love for what seemed like hours. We dozed off, and when we woke up, we made love again, and again, and again. It was perfect. Was it as special for Rain as it was for me? We shared my bed every night since then. I liked the fact that she was not afraid to challenge me. How long Rain would be part of my life? Was she a reason, a season, or a lifetime? During the next days, we established a happy routine. Rolf worked at home, so he had flexible hours and could take me to a mountain trail or some other adventure. I also convinced Rolf to show me the backdrops of his days as a shy teen. Places attached to a meaningful memory. I told you I wasn't shy. I was quiet, he corrected me. Noted. Growing up in Middletown was magical. I could ride with my bike everywhere. After school, we used to play baseball outside. We would even stay outside playing way after dark under the streetlights. Our neighbors would sit on the front porch and actually engage in conversations. We spent our summers at the Indian Lake campground. I just smiled and nodded, enjoying the expression on his face while he told me about his childhood and teenage years. The real reason why I never learned to swim is that one summer, a kid drowned at the lake. His body was recovered later from the bottom. I will never forget that day. The camp was closed and I was sent back home. He was looking at the lake while he was telling me the story. I hugged him from behind tightly. I'm sorry, Rolf. Death is always a tragedy, but it's especially tragic when the dead person is a child. I've been afraid of going into the lake since then, he said under his breath. And yet you let me teach you how to float, I said, resting my chin on his shoulder. He shrugged. They say we must confront our fears. Maybe it was time to conquer mine. I shivered. My own dark fears pushed to come to the surface. They were always lurking in the back of my mind. Are you okay? Rolf asked me, turning around. I forced a smile and gave him a nod. Yeah, I'm just chilly. That's all, I lied. As though to confirm my words, a tremor shivered through my body, bringing up a rash of goosebumps on my arms. "Oh," he said relieved, and put his jacket on my shoulders. Rolf claimed to be just an average guy, but he was indeed an extraordinary man. I've met lots of people around the world, but I never felt as close to any of them as I feel to him. I just hoped he didn't get too attached to me. He shouldn't, or he was going to end up getting hurt. "Do you have any siblings?" I asked him. "No, I'm an only child. My mom gave birth to me when she was almost 40. Both of my parents retired and went to live in Florida when I went to college. With each passing day, we grew closer, learned from each other, and created amazing memories. I shared with him things I had experienced in my travels. Rolf shared with me about Middletown and the people who lived in it. I met a lot of interesting people, and sooner than later, I was making lots of new friends. I got to know Sheriff Thomas and his deputy, Nick. They were both actively involved in community activities. Sheriff Thomas knew everyone, and everyone knew him. I talked for hours with Laura, the owner and manager of the only bed and breakfast in town, and we discovered we had a lot in common. Through her, I met her Aunt Molly, a fascinating person who had traveled a lot. The Middletown Community Center offered a free weekly social dancing class, and I convinced Rolf to come with me. We had so much fun dancing together. Flowers bloomed in rich profusion beneath the slender trees, sending their sweet fragrance into the summer air. More than ever, the place had a feeling of enchantment as the slight breeze moved the leaves overhead, sending dappled pools of golden light dancing across the brilliant purple flowers. Rolf and I made love in every improbable spot of the house. One day, while we were hiking, I grabbed Rolf's hand and dragged him, running across a meadow toward an empty barn. We rolled over each other, laughing and kissing like two teenagers. We made love in the barn, filling each other up. That night, the sunset was like a Baroque painting. One warm night, I finally fulfilled my dream of making love in a lake under the stars. Rolf didn't want to take any money from me, so in exchange, I cleaned his place and cooked dinner for him. One particular evening, I planned on making beef Wellington with roasted potatoes with garlic and herbs and apple pie. I had had many cooking lessons from different people around the world. I kept all the recipes in a notebook in my backpack. I made my way to the grocery store and met Theodore, a wrinkled old man. He looked like someone's grandpa. "Hi, I am Rain. I am staying with Rolf." His face was stretched in a broad smile full of wrinkles. "Pleased to finally meet you, Rain. I've heard about you. I am Theodore. How do you like Middletown so far?" "I love it," I blurted out. "It is so quiet, peaceful, beautiful, and very friendly around here. It's magical, too. It is all that and more if you don't mind the gossip." "Nah, I expected," I said, laughing. "I love your store. It looks like the ones you see in Old West movies." "Thank you. It has been in my family for 3 generations." "Wow, that's truly impressive," I said, taking a closer look around. Theodore projected very positive energy. He was a genuinely warm and friendly person. When I told him so, he replied, "You're positively glowing too. Maybe that has something to do with Rolf?" "Yeah, friendly and nosy too. I had stayed in enough small towns to know how fast and far rumors can fly." "Maybe a little," I giggled. "He is cute and a great person, but we're just friends." I handed him the list of items I needed. While Theodore looked for them, a young woman walked straight into me. She looked at me from head to toe. Her eyes seemed to ask, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" I didn't like the vibes I was picking from her. Toxic energy. She was giving me a headache. "Good morning. I am Rain, Rolf's friend. I'm staying at his place." "Nice to meet you," I said, offering her my hand. "Morning," she grumped, ignoring my hand. Okay, I definitely didn't like her. "Someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed," I sing-songed. It was obvious she didn't like me. Some people won't like you no matter what you do, so I never wasted my time and energy trying to win them over. Theodore came to my rescue. "Tanya, you're being rude to my client. If you can't behave yourself, I'll have to ask you to leave," he said in a firm tone. "Whatever." Tanya rolled her eyes before muttering that she preferred to go to the mall. She turned around and left the building in a rather hasty manner, leaving me and Theodore alone. "Sorry about that," he said, his voice just above a whisper. "Tanya always had a thing for Rolf. She probably heard the rumors about you staying at his place and assumed we were together?" Theodore nodded. "Well, I can't blame Rolf for not going after her. She certainly needs a lesson in manners and a good aura cleaning session." Theodore let out a short laugh. "Well, when it comes to ladies, Rolf can be a little bit Clueless? I offered. The old shopkeeper moved his head to the sides. Rolf can be quiet and reserved, but he isn't stupid. I'm pretty sure he knows Tanya has feelings for him, but he just doesn't reciprocate them, and he is too much of a gentleman to ever mention it. Oh, I see, I smiled. Rolf was undeniably growing on me. Theodore handed me 2 paper bags. They felt very heavy in my arms, and I juggled them, feeling a little lightheaded. How much do I owe you? My voice trailed off. I'll put everything on Rolf's tab. I'm sure he would like it this way. Rain. I heard Theodore crying my name, but it sounded to me like he was calling from a faraway distance. I felt myself sway, dropping the bags and barely noticing the contents rolling away as I wobbled on my feet. Then something cold and hard hit my head and everything went black. Are you sure you're okay, Rain? I asked, holding her in my arms. Rain nodded, pressing the ice pack Theodore handed her against the egg-sized lump it was forming on her skull. Yes, I'm fine. My ego is a little bruised, though. You fainted. We should call an ambulance or go to see a doctor, I suggested. You could have a concussion. Rain paled at my suggestion. No, I've likely got a mild concussion. I just got a little lightheaded because I didn't eat a lot for lunch today, that's all. Why are you so determined not to go to the emergency room? I asked, genuinely confused. People don't just faint, Rain. She looked at me, her lips pressed together. Listen, Rain said finally. I know what doctors are going to say. I have low iron levels, she confessed, keeping her tone as reassuring as possible. It's nothing, really. I hesitated and frowned, still not convinced. I could tell she was hiding something from me. Theodore shouldn't have called you. You were busy. I would have never forgiven him if he hadn't called me. I fainted for a few seconds. I hit my head, but I'm okay. You don't have to make a big deal out of it, Rolf. I swear I'm fine. Rain couldn't hide the slightly annoyed tone in her voice. I nodded, but I didn't calm down. Do you faint often? She rolled her eyes. It had happened to me before. As I said, I have low iron. Google it. It's quite common, especially for girls. I heard about that, Theodore stated. My sister, rest in peace, had anemia and was fainting all over the place. She had to eat copious amounts of red meat. See? Rain said, no big deal. Handing the ice pack back to Theodore, Rain climbed to her feet. Theodore had already put her grocery items back in the bags and they were neatly packed, waiting for me to collect them. Are you truly okay? I asked, watching her carefully. Rain forced a smile to her face. I am fine, worrywart. Heading out to the street, I made a mental note to give her Tylenol as soon as we were back in the house. That would make her feel better. It's just her iron levels, I told myself as we walked back home. But I didn't believe it. She went home singing and prancing and telling me about the fabulous dinner she was going to cook for me. Are you always this happy? Tilting her head, Rain regarded me, choosing her words carefully before she replied. I am happy. I've always tried to get the most out of life. We decide to be happy, or not. You have given me a very simplistic answer to a very complex subject, I objected. No, I didn't. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional, she stated. I didn't say that, by the way, it was Buddha. Let me guess, you've spent some time in a Tibetan monastery. She looked at me and giggled. Maybe. You've obviously lived a charmed life. I glanced over at her in time to see a shadow pass across her face and her smile falter slightly. I never knew my biological parents. I grew up in foster care. It was traumatic, but not in an everyday you're miserable kind of way. It's like a thought in the back of your head where you know this isn't your family. These people don't love you, and one false move will have you packing in a minute. I was about 13 years old when I decided not to get attached to anyone again. Imagine that. Most girls at that age are worrying about having a new phone or their math homework. I was mending my broken heart. I mentally slapped myself for my thoughtless words. Rain. I had no idea. I am sorry, me and my big mouth. Please forgive me, I shouldn't have said what I said. She waved her hands to stop me. Stop it. Apology accepted. She smiled at me and placed her hand on my heart. You didn't mean to hurt me, Rolf. You're a good man with a good heart. I know that. Rain plastered a smile back on her face, oblivious to the brief insight she'd just given me. You know, in a way, you're so right. I've led a very charmed life. A life that's led me to you in this awesome town. And I've made a new friend today. Theodore is a very interesting person. You met Theodore just today, I argued. You hardly became friends with him. A friend is just a stranger you haven't met yet, she quoted. Rain was completely and utterly crazy, and I was completely and utterly in love with her. When we got home, Rain went into the kitchen and I finished some work on my computer. I heard her singing in the kitchen as she prepared dinner. She had a beautiful voice, high and clear. She seemed to be okay, and I pushed my fears to the back of my mind. Dinner was delicious. Somehow she knew all my favorite foods. Summer passed in a dream. Rain always looked on the bright side in everything and saw the good in everyone. As a result, people were naturally drawn to her sweet and charming nature. She was the most sociable person I'd ever known. During the short time she had been living in Middletown, she had made more friends than I had made in my whole life. She made friends everywhere she went and snatched up acquaintances in every corner. Every way I went, I had people asking me about her or sending her their regards. She started going to the gym with Georgina, Middletown High gym teacher and the wife of my nerd friend, Daniel. At the gym, she met Grace, the town's realtor, and Derek and Bella, the gym's owners. Very quickly, she became friends with all of them. Through them, Rain met Laura and Percy, owners of the only bed and breakfast in town. Rain spent a lot of time at the B&B kitchen, sharing recipes with Laura and her Aunt Molly. Rain was amazed by Molly's artifacts collection, and sooner than later they were drinking tea and exchanging tales about their trips around the world. My social life increased quite a bit. We were constantly being invited to dinners and gatherings. I started going to the gym with her. While the nature of these friendships might seem superficial to the eye of the idler observer, she knew the family stories of all of them, and she left a lasting impression on all of them. Rain spread love around her with random acts of kindness. Like the time she was late for dinner, and I found her talking with Mrs. Rowland, a lonely widow neighbor. She was having tea with her. There are so many lonely people who have nowhere else to go and no one to share their lives with, Rain said. She lived a fascinating life. I felt ashamed of myself for all the times I walked by my old lady neighbor without saying more than have a good day. I didn't even know her first name. Rain's boundless energy and positivity were inspiring. She talked me into taking dancing classes at the community center. I always wanted to learn how to dance, but I had always felt clumsy and uncoordinated. In my first class, I was very anxious, but thanks to Rain's patient and positive personality, I did it great and my self-confidence improved. She also taught me how to meditate. I was happier, more focused and productive at work, and more comfortable in my own skin. She was not only a breath of fresh air for me, but for everyone she met. Life with her was never dull or lacking in adventure. She turned my world upside down in a way no one else ever had. Maybe my first impression was right. She was a fairy with magic in her veins. For the first time in my life, I was truly happy, knowing I would share my life with Rain. I used to lie awake at night, reflecting on all the positive changes she brought into my life. We spent as much time together as possible, walking, exploring, laughing. Yes, we had amazing sex, but my feelings for Rain went far beyond that. It was about her, being with her, and getting to know her. The sex was incredible, but it was her entire being that captivated me. Yet, despite my deep feelings for her, I never acted on my attraction. I was too afraid of rejection, of her not feeling the same way. I couldn't cage a bird meant to be free. My feelings for her were like a moth drawn to the flame, and I was scared of letting them fully unfold. We shared many experiences, held hands, kissed, cuddled, and had sex, but we never defined our relationship or talked about the future. I feared that one day she might fly away, seeking new horizons and adventures, and that would break my heart. Then my phone rang, and the name on the screen surprised and scared me. "Hey Lucas, long time no talk. Where in the world are you?" "Hello, Rain, meine Liebe." "Actually, I'm in the US, specifically in Portland," Lucas said with his usual enthusiasm. "Really? What are you doing in America?" I asked, surprised. "Just taking care of some family business and checking on my favorite girl." "I can't believe you haven't called me in over a year," he said with a dramatic pout. Lucas had a flair for theatrics and was madly rich. "You've barely used the credit card I gave you lately." I was worried. I smiled, rolling my eyes at his familiar antics. "How are you?" "And you know exactly what I am asking." His voice now was dead serious. I knew where this conversation was heading, and I didn't like it. I took a deep breath and said, "I am well, I guess." "You guess?" "Rain, what's wrong?" 2 weeks ago, I had a little faint." "You fainted? Did the doctor do a whole-body checkup?" "Lucas, stop. I didn't go to see any doctor. I had a little dizzy spell, that's all." "I'm fine," I repeated. "Or it could be something." "Rain, you know you have to have yourself checked every 3 to 6 months. You got none." I checked. No. The reality of my situation had finally caught up with me. I haven't fainted or experienced any other symptoms since. Well, you know, I am fine. Stop worrying. Where are you now? I'm in a small town in the northwest. It's called Middletown. Quite a charming place with very nice people and some spectacular views. He rolled his eyes on the phone screen. You find nice people wherever you go. Have you met someone special? I have, I told him honestly. Nothing too deep or serious, you know me. But he is a sweet, kind, and caring man. He is special in every sense of the word. I am enjoying it being with him. I was smiling and blushing while telling Lucas about Rolf. OMG, what was happening to me? Well, I am happy for you, Rain. Did you tell him about— No, I interrupted him. I didn't even want to hear the word. Of course not. What would be the point? We are not even in a serious relationship. Rain, you should hear yourself when you talk about this guy. I know firsthand the effect you have on males. I would bet my dad's fortune that he is hooked on you. Lucas was right, and I knew it, which meant it was time to move on. I couldn't fall in love with someone, and I couldn't let Rolf fall in love with me. We had been together the whole summer. Together. We had spent every night in his bed, filling the hours with amazing sex, laughter, and most surprisingly, deep, peaceful sleep. He made me forget about all the bad things that had happened to me, and for that alone, I would love him forever. We hadn't discussed the nature of our relationship in any detail, but I didn't care. I didn't need a label. Rolf knew that my relationship with him was more than house sharing. However, whenever I tried to think about things on a deeper level, anxiety took over. The only way I could deal with my feelings was keeping things light and easy, and taking everything one day at a time. Lucas' voice brought me back to reality. Look, Rain, I have a couple of free days. Why don't you tell me how to reach to your charming little town so we meet and catch up? That sounds great. I'll send you the info. See you soon, Lucas. It will be great to see you again and put some sense into that careless head of yours. Take care, please. I looked at the phone, checking how much time I had left before dinner. I enjoyed grocery shopping as much as I enjoyed cooking. I wanted to make it special because it was probably going to be one of our last ones. Exactly 2.5 hours later, Lucas showed up in Middletown Square driving a luxury car that would attract everyone's attention. Great. I was pretty sure every person in town was watching us and wondering who this man was. Hello, Rain. It's so good to see you again. Small town life suits you. You look great, he said effusively, kissing my cheek. Can I park the car here? Yes, and you can leave it unlocked. Nobody will bother it. Lucas nodded but pressed the alarm button anyway. I am glad you made it to the countryside. I thought you were a big city kind of guy. He looked around. It looks like a nice, clean town. I understand why you like it here. Is your boyfriend joining us? No, we are just friends, Lucas. That's all we've ever been. All we're ever going to be. Friends, you know why. Lucas shook his head. You keep saying that to yourself and eventually you'll believe it. He is in Seattle for a seminar. It's better this way. He can be a bit possessive. Come, there is a delightful restaurant here. The food is amazing. We can catch up there. I took a look around. I could see people pointing at us and whispering already. People in Middletown were always ready for gossip. We crossed Main Square to the Jammed. I couldn't help but feel guilty, and I hated it. You need to get tested, Rain. Stop stalling it. I know you're right, but I am scared. What if I test positive again? Then we'll deal with it like we did the last time. They decided to name the West Wing of the West Coast Medical Center of Hope in Phoenix to recognize my family contributions. Our last donation was $5 million after you were released. Lucas, you shouldn't have. It's just money, meine Liebe. I couldn't let you die. You took Mom out of her depression and helped Dad to realize he was wasting his life and his health in the family business. You have a way with people and you know it. My parents will take me out of their wills if I don't help you in any way I can. Besides, what's all the money worth if I can't help a friend in need? I placed my hand on his cheek. You're sweet, Lucas. I can't thank you enough for everything you and your family have done for me. Lucas paid the check. I looked at my phone. It was 6:30, and I needed to get back to Rolf's place so I could make him the special dinner I had planned before telling him about Lucas. It would be better if he knew about him from me. Lucas, it's been really fun, but I have to go. I have some cooking to do, I said as I motioned to the groceries at my feet. No problem, let me help you with that, he said as he picked up my grocery bag. I didn't mind since I honestly enjoyed his company. We chatted pleasantly during the walk to Rolf's place. When we arrived, Lucas turned to me and said with a bit of embarrassment, Do you mind if I come up and use the restroom? I hesitated. It wasn't my place, after all. But after taking one look at Lucas' pained face, I said, "Of course, come on in." Lucas grabbed the groceries and followed me inside. "The bathroom is in the hallway to the left." I pointed him in the right direction. He gave me a grateful nod and walked swiftly towards the hallway. I turned on the radio and swayed from side to side to the upbeat tones of classical music. I had loved classical music all my life. One of my foster parents introduced me to it through recordings and radio broadcasts when I was a little girl. I hummed the melody as I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine, ready to start cooking. I was planning to make Rolf one of his favorite dishes, salmon with mango salsa and rice pilaf. I loved the fusion of flavors. I put the salmon to bake in the oven and started boiling some water for rice pilaf as I began peeling the mangoes for the salsa. Lucas entered the kitchen and whistled. "Wow, look at you. You look like you know what you're doing." I laughed and said, "Would you like a glass of something?" Although I secretly hoped he would decline. Rolf would be returning in an hour, and I wanted to light some candles and create a romantic environment for him to come home to. "Sure, anything, whatever you're having." I pursed my lips as I poured him a glass of wine. We chatted while I cooked dinner. I had forgotten how fun it was to spend time with Lucas. He kept me in stitches with stories about his travels and his family. After 40 minutes, the mango salsa was ready, the pilaf had been fluffed, and the salmon was resting in the oven. "Come on, it's a waltz," Lucas said, noticing the music on the radio as he grabbed me and pulled me into the living room for an impromptu dance. "I need to do a few things, so come on, Rain, just one dance." "For old times," he said as he spun me under his arm, pulling me into his expert dance frame. I giggled, the combination of wine and spinning making me giddy, erasing any reservations I had wanted to express. Maybe just one dance. I laughed up a storm as my body took over, moving to the rhythm of the music in an almost meditative trance. Lucas was an amazing partner. He could dance to any song that came on. I closed my eyes, focusing on his hand on my back as we swayed elegantly from side to side. It's like you are a stalk of grass swaying in the wind. You don't notice when it stops moving right and starts changing direction. It just flows fluidly with the wind. I closed my eyes and rolled my head from right to left slowly, trying to imagine what it would be like to be a stalk of grass. I was so engrossed in the movement that I completely lost track of time when suddenly I heard a throat clearing. It was Rolf. Another boring seminar in Seattle. I used to assist them to fill in the endless hours of my empty days. I loved the thought that Rain was at home waiting for me. I looked forward to seeing her every day. I loved being with her, having her in his arms, kissing her. She made me feel things I hadn't felt in my whole life. Rain was changing me for the better. Everything about her was sunny and light. Every morning when I woke up, she was the first thing I thought of, and she was my last thought when I fall asleep holding her in my arms. I was falling badly for Rain. My heart was beating fast when I finally got home. I opened the front door and I came to an abrupt halt as my brain registered the sight. Rain was dancing in the arms of another man, in my living room, in my house. The jealousy that suddenly burst up was so fiery that I was taken completely by surprise. On some level, I knew my feelings were unreasonable, but I couldn't help them. Rain's eyes flew open. "Rolf!" she exclaimed happily, as she broke from her male companion and skipped over to me, giving me a big hug. I was stiff beneath her arms. She hugged me harder and gave me a quick kiss on the lips. "You're home early." Noticing the severe look on my face, she immediately came crashing down from her dancing high. "It's 8 p.m. exactly," I said coldly, my eyes never leaving her male companion's face. "I am Rolf. Nice to meet you," I said formally as I gazed at him icily. The guy took my hand and gave it one firm shake. Lucas, huh?" I turned my head to look at Rain. "You didn't tell me we were going to have visitors." Rain pressed her lips together. "Lucas called me and told me he was in the area, so we gathered to catch up and we lost the track of time." "I am sorry." Lucas glanced at his phone and rubbed the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, I'll be going. It was good catching up with you, Rain. I'll see myself out." He gave us a final wave and hurried to the door, opening it without a look back. "Bye, Lucas," Rain said, raising a hand as the door closed. She tried to ignore the tension in the room as she turned to me and said with forced excitement in her voice, "Are you hungry? Dinner is ready. Why don't you go change and I'll bring our plates to the table." She headed to the kitchen without waiting for an answer, hoping that the meal could change the tone of the evening. She hummed along to the music on the radio while she prepared our plates. Are you hungry? I made you one of your favorite meals. She put her hand on top of mine and rubbed it gently. Let's have dinner, she said, smiling fully as she stood up, pulling me towards the dining room. I can't, Rain. I need a moment. I squeezed her hand. I had knots in my stomach. I sighed, a dull ache pulsating at my temples. The combination of a long day at the seminar and the scene with Lucas was a potent headache waiting to happen. I just wanted to lie down and go to sleep. I went to the bedroom and lay back against the pillow and closed my eyes, sighing as the throbbing decreased slowly. I wasn't sure how long I lay that way before a knock on the door roused me. Can I come in? Rain asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. I lifted my heavy lids. Yes, of course you can. I'm just really knackered. Are you hungry? She lifted a tray with a plate of food. The aroma of the food wafted over to me and my stomach grumbled in response. I am hungry, actually. She walked gingerly toward the bed, putting the tray down as she climbed next to me. Here, she said, handing me a cloth napkin. The salmon with mango salsa looked fantastic with its vibrant pink, yellow, and green colors hinting at the flavor sensations to come. What's wrong? She asked, concerned. Something happened at the seminar? No, nothing happened at the seminar. You really don't know? No, I really don't. What's wrong is that I walked in on you dancing with another man in my living room. She shook her head, confused. You're mad because I was dancing with Lucas. It was a little off-putting to walk in on you dancing in the arms of your ex-boyfriend. You were so enthralled with Lucas that you didn't even hear me come into the house. Her neck flushed while her eyebrows knit tightly together. Rolf, I think you were overreacting a bit. I wasn't enthralled, I was just having fun dancing. Besides, Lucas and I were always just friends, she said firmly, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. I looked away, my chest heaving. Why was this so hard for her to understand? My heart raced as I pictured Rain's eyes closed, a blissful look on her face as Lucas and Rain swayed romantically from side to side. It felt like I had stumbled upon an intimate moment that didn't belong to me. That's not what it looked like to me, I said, squeezing my eyes shut, trying to erase the image of Rain and Lucas from my mind. When I opened them again, I was met with Rain's furious gaze. She pointed at me and narrowed her eyes. Are you accusing me of bringing another man here to have sex with him? Her voice was steady but tinged with a mix of bewilderment and disbelief. If I wanted to have an affair, don't you think I'd choose somewhere else? I opened my mouth to respond but found no words. Her logic was sound, yet I still felt wronged. I rubbed the back of my neck, trying to steady my thoughts. So what was he doing here anyway? He called me and I told him where I was. He happened to be in Portland, so he drove over to catch up. He helped me with the bags and then we walked here. The explanation made sense, but the uncomfortable feeling in my chest didn't go away. I had let my insecurities and jealousy cloud my judgment. Why did you invite him in? He asked to use the bathroom. Then I politely offered him a refreshment. She said, emphasizing the word politely with a raise of her eyebrows. And then a waltz came on the radio, and so we danced. It was completely innocent and unplanned. Her explanation was making far more sense than I expected. I felt the heat go out of my anger. She sighed and sat down on the bed heavily. Rolf, Lucas, and I are just friends. He and his family helped me during a very bad time of my life. And no, I don't want to talk about it. Everything Rain said made sense, and yet I couldn't deny the real pain it had caused when I walked in on her. I wanted her to be dancing in my arms, not anyone else's. We had enjoyed many evenings of slow dancing in front of the fire, and it felt intensely personal to see Lucas taking my place, even if that wasn't Rain's intent. I also knew that I had no right to be jealous. We had never defined our relationship. I didn't do anything wrong. We were dancing the waltz. It's not like I was grinding on him or doing the lambada. The waltz is about as innocent a dance as they come, she said. Her lashes fluttered shyly. She looked towards the floor hesitantly. When she looked back at me, she met my eyes fully. I'm sorry, Rolf. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. That was all I needed. I leaned forward and kissed her lightly. Her features seemed to relax, a look of relief on her face. I am sorry too. I acted like a mad, jealous person. I smiled earnestly. Is there any more food? I'm still hungry. She smiled widely. Yes, I'll make you another plate. That night I had trouble sleeping, too much on my mind. Something surged inside me, something primal that made my chest swell and made me want to grab Rolf and hold on to him forever. I closed my eyes and pushed the feelings away. There is no room in my heart for love now, I told myself. No room for Rolf. I'm being selfish. I am hurting him. I shouldn't have stayed so much. The thought of leaving made me sad. Living here with Rolf represented all the things I couldn't have. A man who adored me, a house with a white fence, a small town full of nice and warm people, friends, a future. Even so, I couldn't stay here anymore. I didn't have the luxury to dream of a future. I had to walk away from Middletown before I couldn't do it anymore. I could feel my resolve weaken with every passing minute. I carefully got out of bed and went out for a walk. My phone chimed, and I looked at the screen. It was a text from Lucas. Gut in a bend, liebe Rain. I hope everything is okay with you and Rolf. I really didn't mean to cause any trouble between you two. Yes, everything is okay, Lucas. Can you pick me up tomorrow? Sure. Where are we going? I hesitated for a moment and then typed, to have myself checked. Did Rolf do something due to you? No, of course not. He is a very sweet person. I need to go. What changed? Did you fall out of love with this Rolf guy? It would have been easy to answer yes, but I didn't want to say more lies, so I typed, no. So I was right. You're in love with him? You're so annoying. You love him, and even so you're leaving him, Lucas insisted. I looked at the screen for a while. You know why. I can let him fall for me. Another text chimed in. Does he know why you are leaving him? No, he'll never know. It will kill him. You truly care about this guy. Yes, I will. That's why I have to leave before our relationship gets too serious, and he ends with a broken heart. I think it's too late for that. I saw the love in his eyes, and I think in yours too. I am not sure running away is a good idea. Are you sure this is what you want? Yes, this is what I want. Are you going to help me or not? You know he'll do. But if Rolf loves you like I think he does, he won't care. I know. That's why I have to leave. I can't drag Rolf into what is certain to be months of pain and misery. I can't. I think you're making a big mistake. I'll pick you up tomorrow, though. Just text me when you are ready. I went back to Rolf's place and climbed into our bed. I was lucky he was a heavy sleeper. I wrapped my arms around him and let the tears stream until exhaustion finally won, and I fell asleep. The next morning, Rolf woke up and got ready to drive to Seattle again. I couldn't help but think that this was going to be our last time together. I was going to miss him. Rolf opened his mouth a few times, testing the words before he spoke. I'm sorry if you thought I was angry at you. I'm not. I had no right to act like I did. I looked at him, a reassuring smile on my face. We talked and sorted things out. We are good, Rolf. He moved closer, his eyes roaming over my face as if he was seeing me for the first time, searching for something in my features. You have this light inside you like you've swallowed the sun or a whole star or something. You're so happy and alive. I became addicted to you. I touched his face, a spark running through my body from the warmth of his skin as I cupped his jaw. We're all alive. We all have light inside us. We're all living, breathing people who are lucky enough to be alive right now, on this planet floating through space. Pretty amazing if you think about it. He moved his head up and down. You look at the world with a child's eyes, one of your many charms. Now you're sweet-talking me, I said while I playfully punched his arm. I want to kiss you. His words, which tumbled in a low growl from his lips, stunned me. I could see by the way his eyes rounded that he'd surprised himself as well. We have kissed, many times. You never asked my permission before. I know, but somehow I felt I should ask today. Something feels different, if he knew. Maybe if I kissed him hard enough, I could chase away the sadness from his eyes. Perhaps I could remind him his life was still worth to be lived, even if I wasn't part of it anymore. My arms came up to circle his shoulders, my fingers sliding into his hair as I tilted my head back, welcoming his mouth to mine. His lips were full and warm, and they slanted against mine. His arms came around me, lifting me to the tips of my toes as he deepened the kiss, sliding his mouth across mine and drawing my tongue tentatively into a wanton dance with his. A small sound escaped me, like a contented sigh, and I felt his arms tighten around me, drawing me closer. When the kiss broke, we remained close. I struggled to catch my breath. The pulse in my throat still raced. I didn't think I'd ever been kissed in a way that left me slightly dizzy before. At least our last kiss was a good one. I'll see you tonight, Rain, he said, closing the door behind him. I just nodded and waved. I stood there watching the door for a long time. Then I dragged myself to the bedroom and packed my stuff. I didn't take much time. I always travel light. After all, I was the queen of moving. I hated goodbyes. Didn't see the point of them since they only made people feel sad, and reminded them of how finite everything in life was. Better to just leave, I told myself. No sad, drawn-out goodbyes. Leave while the memories are still good and ones to be cherished. I'd never made a commitment really to anyone or anything, but I could feel myself getting close with Rolf, and it scared the life out of me. I texted Lucas, and he was at the door quicker than expected. I climbed into his car and let out a long sigh. Hot tears of pain pricked up in my eyes. Are you sure about this, Rain? Yes, it's for the best. You didn't tell him? Lucas couldn't help the accusation in his voice. I didn't blame Lucas for confronting me, for making me answer questions I didn't want to answer. No, I said, keeping my voice as light as possible. It's not something I share with people voluntarily. The only reason why you know is because I got sick while I was staying with you and your family, and you took me to a hospital before I woke up. Rolf looks like a great guy. I am sure he'll understand. Tears escaped, flowing slowly and steadily for several minutes before giving way to huge, soul-racking sobs. I've never seen you so happy, so in love. I think you're overstating what's going on between Rolf and me, I interrupted him. What we have isn't serious. We like each other, enjoy each other's company. That's it. Rain, you're lying to yourself. I won't tell Rolf I am sick, I blurted out. There's no reason for him to know. There's no way I can heap my disaster on him, Lucas. I would appreciate it if you just drive away, okay? Okay, but I think you're making a big mistake. Besides, we don't know for sure if you are sick again. I just shrugged. Deep inside, I knew something wasn't right with me. I'm not running away, I told myself as we traversed the streets of Middletown. I've left him a note. I'm simply moving on before things get too heavy. I couldn't deal with the conversations in my own mind right now, much less explain to Rolf why things between us were over. I tried to catch my breath, but my lungs wouldn't capture the air. There was a 2-ton weight on my chest, threatening to crush me. I was too tired to even try to get a grip on my emotions. Control was pointless. I gave in. The flood of tears flowed down my cheeks. Lucas turned on the radio, which saved him from thinking of ways to make small talk as he drove away. Maybe Birds got it right. Mate for one season and move on, I muttered to myself. It was raining outside and it was raining inside. The streets of Seattle were still full of cars. Although the sun had already set, the streets were still bright with the combination of lights on in buildings, as well as vehicle and streetlights. Despite the bustle of activity, I was blind to everything happening around me as my thoughts went back to Rain. Last night, I had let my anger get the best of me. Rain was one of those rare people who could truly have deep friendships with the opposite sex. Even so, it was hard for me to comprehend how Rain had all of these close friends who happened to be male. I'd never had a platonic female friend that was equivalent to Rain's relationship with Lucas. Of course, I wasn't as social as Rain. I felt intensely protective of her. I twisted my mouth, recognizing my feelings for what they were, petty jealousy, as I drove through the busy streets of Seattle. I had to tell Rain how I felt about her, how much she had changed my life from that very first moment I saw her dancing in the rain, how much I enjoyed being with her, how much I loved the way she laughed, even when I wasn't trying to be funny, how she, I don't know, restored my faith in humanity. Was that too strong? I don't think so. Rain definitely restored my faith in life and love. I knew I had found something real. She was the greatest thing that happened to me. My only concern was about the future. I had to tell her I loved her and wanted a full relationship with her. A happy, healthy relationship hinges on good communication. I needed to address the elephant in the room. My mother's sage advice about relationships came to my mind. If you don't rock the boat by talking about the important things in your relationship, one day she may suddenly say, "I'm out of here," and it will hit you like a brickbat because you didn't see it coming. I felt drained from the long day at the seminar and the adrenaline leaving my body. I opened the front door and walked into my house. "Rain?" I said quietly. The living room was dark. I stopped and listened, hoping for some clue as to where she was. Dead silence. "Rain, where are you?" I called out. All the lights were out. I was disappointed that she didn't run to me and offered me her greeting of light kisses peppered all over my face that I so enjoyed. I patted the wall for the light switch and flipped it on. I'm not sure what I expected with the lights on, but nothing seemed different. A knot formed in my stomach as I scanned the room. Clenching my fists, I walked across the living room. All I heard was the beating of my own heart and the heaviness of my breath. Maybe Rain was just asleep. And maybe this feeling in the pit of my stomach was my imagination. Please just be asleep. Something else didn't feel right. Goosebumps formed over my arms. There's something I need to tell you, I hollered. I love you, I screamed in my mind. There was a note by the coffee pot. My heart sank. I had always feared that at some point Rain was going to fly away looking for new adventures. I felt my stomach nodding as I read what she wrote to me. Dear Rolf, I have to leave. I can't explain why, but it's nothing you did or didn't do. Nothing you are or aren't. This is about me, not you. Please don't torment yourself trying to figure out what you did wrong, or what you could have done differently. I was immensely happy with you, and I loved every minute we shared. I am attracted to the essence of a person, not his looks. Beauty is in the soul, and you, my dear Rolf, have the most beautiful soul I've ever met. No, there is not another man. I would never do that to you. I have my reasons to leave the way I did. I know this will hurt. Please forgive me. But it would hurt more if I stay. I know it doesn't look like it, but I do love you. Please take care, Rain. I just sat on the couch, numb and in shock, not knowing what to do next. I couldn't feel anything. I wrestled back and forth with myself. Why did it have to end? What went wrong? Was it because of our argument? I thought we were good. I thought we were moving towards something. I needed to talk with Rain one last time and get closure, to know what went wrong and all that. To do that, first I needed to find her. I knew exactly who could help me. Well, the prodigal son is back. Ready to get your ass kicked in Halo Infinite? My friend, Daniel, greeted me as soon as he opened the door of his house. Hi, Daniel, I didn't come to play Halo, sorry. Daniel studied my face for a moment. Are you okay? He asked pointedly. I've been better, I answered truthfully. Come on in, take a seat. I'll make you a tea. What's wrong? His face was etched with concern. I hesitated about how to bring up what happened with Rain. It's about Rain, the hippie chick that has been living at your place? Yes, the one and only. Georgina loves her. Well, everyone loves her, he said, placing a cup of tea in front of me. People have been wondering which is the deal with you two. There are all kinds of theories around. Are there? Well, it's Middletown, man. Gossip is like a sport here. If you are looking for tips about how to close the deal with her, I am afraid I have none. Georgina chased me relentlessly till I said yes to her. Daniel was married to a gorgeous gym teacher. If he had any hidden talent that made his wife fall for him, he had kept it a secret. He was as nerd as they come. Well, you can count yourself among the lucky ones, Daniel. Rain not only didn't chase after me, but she ran away. Oh, Rolf, I am sorry. What can do for you? You can help me find her. Daniel twisted his mouth. Please don't tell me you're going to go all pathetic and beg her to come back, because that never works. I know it firsthand. Honestly, I would if I knew it would make her come back. But Rain is not like that. I took a sip of my tea. What did she say when she left? Nothing. She moved out while I was in a seminar in Seattle. She left me a note. I handed Rain's note to Daniel. He adjusted the glasses on his nose and read it slowly. I've been subjected to some lame breakup excuses, but this is a good one. She is not blaming you for anything you did. That must be a relief. It seems she had her own reasons for leaving, and they had nothing to do with you, which is exactly what you would say if you want to break up with someone without hurting his feelings. Daniel nodded and rubbed his chin. I can see your point, Rolf. That's why I need to talk with her and know her real reasons. Right now it's a nightmare up here. I pointed at my temple. Nothing is worse than not getting closure. I can't move on when I feel like I don't know the real reason why things didn't work out. Daniel nodded. I think I can help you. Deputy Nick and I are good friends. His wife Lizzie works for the FBI. I am sure they can find her. Which is her name? Rain. And her last name? Shit, I never asked her. She was always Rain for me. I don't want to scare you, Rolf, but Rain sounds like a made-up name. I ran my hand through my hair in despair. You're right, I'm an idiot. I never thought about asking her. Being in love makes you stupid. I'm the living proof of that. Is there any information you can give me about her to narrow the search? Family? Friends? She was an orphan and grew up in foster homes. The only friend of hers I knew was an Austrian guy named Lucas. He was in town with her yesterday. I shivered at the images playing in my head. Daniel nodded and took notes. I heard the rumors about it from Georgina. Look, it doesn't look good, Rolf. Made-up name. Being mysterious about her past. Never staying much in one place. I knew where Daniel was heading. Rain is not a criminal running from the law, Daniel. It doesn't hurt to check anyway. Do you have any pictures of her? I went through my phone's gallery and found a couple of good ones. She was smiling at the camera. I showed them to Daniel and he nodded. That helps. Send them to my WhatsApp. I'll have Nick run a check on them. Give me her phone number too. I'll check on whose name her phone number is registered to. Thank you, Dan. I owe you one. I'll put it on your tab, Rolf. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine, I hedged. Or as fine as I can be, considering. He nodded and patted my shoulder. Life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Life sucked. Sometimes, for some people, life sucked in the worst possible way. Rain obviously hadn't learned that yet. Or had she? I pondered the flickering shadows I had glimpsed in her eyes. She hid them well, quelled them quickly, but I'd seen them when we talked about family, when someone mentioned her short hair, which I didn't truly understand. Rain did not seem to be a girl overly caught up in her appearance or attached to her hair. In fact, there were never any hints that she was running from something, or that she was scared of something from her past. But she was. It was clear to me now. I had a sense that whatever she was running from wasn't very far behind her. The expression on Dr. Jackson Brown's face said it all. Now I was certain cancer had forced its way back into my life. I sat back against the chair in his office, nervously touching my hair. I rubbed my nose, inhaling the scent of Rolf's shampoo. I missed him. Wish he was here. I'm sorry, Lorraine. His voice was low. I heard him take a deep breath as if he were struggling with what to say next. Your lab work came back, Lorraine. Dr. Brown's eyes fixed on me, then shifted to Lucas. The white blood cell count is 22,000. Yep, my real name is Lorraine Williams. I always hated it. Please, doctor, you know I prefer to be called Rain. I knew it. I knew it. Shit, my cancer is back. I can't breathe. My chest stills and I feel like I'm going to pass out. I reached for the box of tissues on the end table and blew my nose. I stared blankly at my feet. Almost 2 years, that's it. 19 months and 29 days of remission, and now it was back. Dr. Brown was a lovely man, but he pulled no punches. After finishing 11 grueling months of treatment, he told me my cancer would probably come back. I was hoping he would be wrong, but that hope was already shattered. Somehow, even though the recurrence wasn't anything I wasn't expecting, it was still as jarring as the first time around. After everything that I went through, I had earned these months of normalcy, a time to build my body back up, to feel a sense of what my life was like before, because I loved my life before. I still love my life now. It's just different. I wasn't sure if my body could handle another set of rounds of chemo. Could I mentally withstand the emotional turmoil that goes with it? Again? What seemed like hours passed before anyone spoke. What options do we have this time? Lucas asked, his voice cracking. That's when the room came sharply back into focus. I lifted my eyes to Dr. Brown. His gaze drifted to his desk. He removed his glasses and laid them on top of my file. Leukemia has come back and we need to treat you aggressively this time, more aggressively than we had before. Your best chance is a bone marrow transplant. You're still on the transplant list waiting for a match. In the meantime, well, use chemo. Lucas' family was quite well off and they'd spent thousands on treatments for me, even traveling the world searching for a compatible bone marrow donor to no avail. I nodded, not knowing what to say. The lump in my throat made it hard to breathe. I'd heard this spiel before, but it didn't get any easier. Sitting up higher in my seat, I put on my brave face. Lucas discussed my options with Dr. Brown. I'd tried to take in all the information, but my mind kept hanging up on keywords and phrases. The doctor and Lucas were going on about drug trials I had a 65% chance of surviving. Lucas had released a huge sigh of relief when the doctor shared that bit of information. I had forced myself to smile while wondering about the other 35%. Had those women been grateful to hear the odds too, not knowing at the time they stood on the wrong side of the statistic? My hair has finally grown back and hung almost to my shoulders. I didn't want to wake up every morning to chunks of it on my pillow. What good is clean hair when it's clogging the drain in the shower? Soon it will be gone. Every last strand. When do I start treatment? I asked, tucking my hair behind my ears. My focus stayed on Dr. Brown. If I so much as glanced over at Lucas, I'd break down, and I couldn't do that. Monday. I closed my eyes and fought the oncoming tears. Feeling sorry for myself wasn't an option. Yeah, I had cancer. Nothing I could do about it besides accept the fact. But that nagging voice in the back of my head kept pushing. I felt fine. Maybe there was a mix-up at the lab. Could the numbers be wrong? Why me? Why again? How could I feel so good, but have cancer ravaging my body? I swiped the tears from my cheeks. I'd just started to have a life, and now I was back to being an outcast. Life sucked. Lucas took me out for dinner. He sat quietly and reserved. His eyes were puffy and red. He didn't throw any chairs at Dr. Brown's office this time, a good sign that he was taking this lapse better than the last one. I hated the stress my disease caused. I tried so hard to be strong, to be positive, but it was too much, and I was tired of fighting. Neither of us ate much. Our appetites had disappeared with the test results. So what about this guy, Rolf? What about him? You just disappeared on him. If the guy cares for you as I think he does, he won't let it go. The last thing I need is Rolf feeling sorry for me and staying with me out of pity. I let out a long, exasperated sigh. I can't deal with this right now, Lucas. Don't you think I have already too much on my plate? He nodded. Sorry. The mental image of Rolf sitting alone in the living room reading my note made my heart shrink. Not that I was seriously considering a future with him. What future can you offer when you're not certain you actually have one? Better cry now for a girl who left him than cry later for a girl who died of cancer. No, I am not giving up, I said to myself. Lucas drove me in silence to an apartment he'd rented for me, which suited me well. When I left the center the first time I was here, I told myself, it's not fair. I don't want to stop living my life that way I want to. I won't let cancer steal my joy. I plan to keep enjoying every second of my life. I knew that it was a temporary state, but that almost made it more beautiful. I slurped up every second of it. Now that the time was over, I wanted more. I still had so many things to do, so many places to visit. The weekend moved slower than a funeral procession. Sorry, bad joke. I let Lucas take me out to a restaurant again. I'd be puking my guts out soon enough, so I figured I might as well enjoy as many good meals as I could. Soon, I'd be back to being the bald girl with cancer. I hated it. On Monday, Lucas drove me to the center and told me that he was planning to fly back to Austria the next day. I completely understood. He had a family, a business, and responsibilities. He had been already kind enough with me. I couldn't ask for more. Hi, Rain. I am Julia, the nurse said as I walked into the hospital room Monday morning. I was on a first-name basis with all the nurses and staff members on the floor. They still remembered me. I am pretty sure Lucas tipped all of them. I remember you. You have 2 kids and your husband is a firefighter, right? Yes, that's me. I hoped I'd never see you in here again, darling. That makes 2 of us. I sat down on the reclining bed. I squeezed my eyes closed as Julia rubbed alcohol on my hand before inserting the IV. Watching made my stomach crawl. Feeling the needle go in felt bad enough. Seeing it just reminded me how real it all was. The central line, my first of many visual reminders, would soon be attached to my chest. In my mind, I was back in Middletown. Everything was more vibrant, more beautiful. All of the colors so magnificently blended together, yet still their own hues and shades. All done, Julia announced, bringing me back to reality. Dr. Brown will be here in a few minutes. I'm sure you don't, but I have to ask, do you have any questions? I shook my head. I had no questions. I could probably write a textbook of procedures by now. Julia sat down on the bed next to me and ran her fingers through my hair. Your hair is beautiful, Rain. I really like this cut on you. Thank you. Last time when my hair started falling out, Julia sat with me, holding my hand as I cried. I knew it was just hair, but it was my hair. Soon I'd look like Professor X. I tried a wig once. Once was enough. It itched. The annoying part of being bald wasn't the stares or the whispers, or even the silence. It was the people that felt sorry for me. I didn't want them to pity me. I was a warrior. I'd beaten cancer once, and I could do it again. At least that's what I told myself. Dr. Brown walked in and gave us a slight grin. He held my chart in his hands, but he didn't look at it. He probably had it memorized. Julia stood next to him. Hey, Rain, he said, flipping on the overhead lights. So, are you ready? As ready as he'll ever be, I guess. Who is ever ready to be sliced open and have tubes put inside their veins? Julia patted my shoulder. You're my hero, she whispered. I slipped my right arm out of my bra strap and tank top sleeve. The procedure happened while I was conscious, but I really wished they'd knock me out. Because of the local anesthetic, I didn't feel pain. I felt the tugging, though. Oh, and I could hear the little tools and the clanking on the metal tray. Those sounds alone were enough to make me nauseous. Julia smoothed the skin on the right side of my chest with an alcohol wipe. The scent of rubbing alcohol would forever be burned in my nostrils. You're going to feel some stinging, Dr. Brown said. Stinging? I didn't think stabbing someone with large needles multiple times in the chest qualified as stinging. I took a deep breath. Julia held my hand and I squeezed it harder each time the local anesthetic pricked me. Tears formed behind my lids, but I fought them back. I could be strong. This was nothing. When Dr. Brown finished, the bed started moving. My head slowly sank down as my feet began to rise. Next to me, Julia never let go of my hand. Her soft expression gave me strength. I balled my other hand into a fist as hard as I could, then slowly let my fingers fan out. I concentrated on breathing steadily. My eyes stayed closed. Dr. Brown started working. I knew exactly what he was doing. First, he'd insert the needle into a vein in my chest. Then, with Julia's help, he'd put a guide wire into the vein. Next, he'd cut one small slit in my chest and another in my neck. That part I didn't mind. I felt nothing when they cut me. It was the next part that I dreaded. Julia grabbed the small white garbage can and held it up to my mouth just in case. Dr. Brown slid the central line in the lower cut on my chest and came out at the slit in my neck. I felt the pressure it caused. My stomach started to churn and my mouth exploded with saliva. I tried to hold back. Really, I did, but I couldn't help it. "Go ahead, Rain," the good doctor assured me. I puked in the basket. Julia wiped my mouth with a wet paper towel she'd grabbed before she sat down. She swiped my hair back and sighed. I nodded to her. The rest of the procedure happened quickly. I didn't open my eyes until the stitches around the new cuts had been put in place. Already the central line felt weird, but I knew it would become just another appendage once I got used to it. "All done," Dr. Brown informed me as Julia straightened out the bed. "Can you sit up?" Julia, still holding my hand, helped me up. I felt dizzy and lightheaded. The room began to spin. I shook my head and Julia guided me back down. Feeling the burn rise in my throat, I squeezed Julia's hand twice. Our code. I hope she remembered it. It was the price you paid for having the hospital nurses as your best friends. As soon as I rolled to the side, Julia had the wastepaper basket ready. The worst part wasn't the upchuck, actually. It was the lingering bile aftertaste. I released my grip on Julia's hand and swung both of my arms over my eyes. Inhaling deeply, I let the air out in a small stream. I just needed a minute. The first time Dr. Brown had shown me a video of the procedure, I panicked. I'd almost run from his office screaming. And I would have, if I hadn't passed out first. When I came to, the central line had already been placed. All things considered, I aced it this time. I touched my new appendage involuntarily. I knew what it felt like, but my hand went to it anyway. Feeling it there, protruding from my chest like a lamp cord, made everything more real. Until now, it hadn't been hard to convince myself that the last few days were just a dream. In a dream, you can pinch yourself and wake up. Now that I had needles and wires pushed through me, I couldn't pretend anymore. This was real. "Are you ready to head down to X-ray?" Dr. Brown asked. I sighed and let Julia help me up. She had a wheelchair ready. I hated being pushed all over the hospital, but honestly, I was in no condition to be walking. I sat down like a good patient and allowed the nurse to wheel me down to the second floor, where the technicians would X-ray my new decoration, making sure of its correct position. I did not doubt of its perfect placement, though. Dr. Brown was one of the best oncologists in the nation. After confirming the line's faultless position, Julia taped it down. She wheeled me into another small room with a couple of reclining chairs, a bed, and a 60-inch TV hanging on the wall. I moved myself to one of the leather recliners and got comfortable. Julia attached the chemo drip to my newly placed central line. "Apple juice or orange juice?" "Orange." "You need to drink it all, Rain," Julia warned. "I know you. No one else is here today for you to give it to, and I hate cleaning out wastebaskets filled with juice." I rolled my eyes. "Fine, I'll drink it. I'm bringing you some crackers, too." She walked out the door before I could argue. I was thankful to Julia for offering crackers. I hated inconveniencing her. "Thanks, Julia," I said, looking up. She smiled at me and left. I didn't want to be here. Yes, this really sucked. Sudden despair filled me, and I began to cry in great, agonized sobs, my arms wrapped around myself. But then rage turned inwards, and I began to hit myself, hating my own body for betraying me. "Why me?" I cried out. "Why me? What have I done?" I would have liked someone to talk to, then a shoulder to cry on. I missed Rolf. I missed his arms around me, his warmth beside me in bed, his kisses, his touch, and his comforting words. I missed him and I needed him. I was such an idiot walking out from him as I did. The sound of the door brought me back from despair world. I didn't want anyone feeling sorry for me, but I guess what I was doing was even worse. I was feeling sorry for myself. I quickly rubbed away the tears, and then I saw him. Rain? My heart had never technically stopped before that I knew of, but at the sight of him, I wondered if it just had. It was like one of those movies where the woman dies, and the super hot guy started performing CPR. Then, her heart suddenly began to beat. Her eyes flew open, and the first thing she saw was the man of her dreams giving her mouth to mouth. Rolf. He was like a ray of sunshine on a dark, stormy day. This is not good news, right? I asked Daniel, watching the expression on his face. Daniel had texted me Saturday night. He just said had news for me. He didn't even specify if it was good or bad. That made me so nervous. I am not sure what kind of news is, Daniel said cautiously. We couldn't find anything about Rain. Sorry, too little information to work with. We are not even sure if Rain is her real name. No credit cards. Her phone number is linked to an Austrian company. I sighed. Yeah, I supposed so. Daniel bit his lower lip. Not much we could do without her real name. Sorry, what kind of idiot let a complete stranger into his life and falls in love with her after a chance meeting? I looked at Daniel in search of answers. We all fall in love with people who are basically total strangers. I met my wife in a disco. The most unlikely place to find the love of your life. I took a chance to talk to her and she chased me because she thought I was worth the risk. Once you fall in love with someone, you don't just stop. I nodded. I had heard the story before. I took my chances dating Georgina. I could have ended up badly hurt. I mean, she is seriously hot and I am just me. Somehow we made it work. We are happy. All I can say is that if you find love, hold on to it, don't let it go. Don't let a great love pass you by. I took my time to let Daniel's words sink in. I had no idea he had become so wise about feelings. I suppose being married does that to you. We did find something about this Lucas guy, he said. I raised my head with interest. His name is Lucas Gruber, Austrian, married, no kids. He has a Facebook page. His family is loaded. He is worth millions. Euros, not dollars. We were able to track him down through his car's plates. He rented his car in Seattle. Rain's phone is registered to a company owned by his family. Rain didn't look like a materialistic kind of girl, one who needs the latest purse or a wardrobe full of designer outfits. The girl travels with a backpack for Pete's sake, which is her relationship with him. I honestly don't know. All I can tell you is that he was the one who drove Rain out of Middletown. He came to pick her up at your place after you left. Nick caught them in a traffic camera. My heart was pounding in my chest. Nothing made sense to me anymore. Was I such a fool? Do you think they are having an affair? Daniel raised his eyebrows. Again, I don't know. You know Rain better than me. Considering all the good things Georgina says about her, I would say no, but only you can answer that. The scene of Lucas and Rain dancing in my living room caught a new meaning now. However, I couldn't reconcile the thought that Rain was sleeping with this guy. Technically, I couldn't call it cheating because I had no idea what kind of relationship we were in. With everything I knew about her, was everything an act? Could she have been pretending the whole time? Was she an actress like no other actress I ever saw? Was it all a lie? No, I refused to think so. Rain wasn't sneaky or underhanded. She definitely wasn't the kind of person who would hurt someone on purpose. That explanation she gave me made sense to me once I cooled down. If she had been pretending the whole time, I had to ask myself what for. What did she get from it? Yeah, she got a place to live for a couple of months and some pocket money. But she cooked for me and kept my place cleaner than ever. We also made love almost every day, some days more than once. Could she fake the way she trembled when I pulled her into my arms and kissed her? Could she fake the frantic beating of her heart when we reached orgasm together? There was so much to contemplate, so much to roll around in my head that I didn't know where to begin. Thank you, Daniel. You gave me a lot to think about. I am sorry I couldn't be more helpful. Well, keep looking in case something comes up. I just nodded and left his place. That night, I was at home trying to cook something for myself when my cell phone rang. I sighed at the unknown number. I had to answer them because it could be a client. A voice I remembered too well greeted me. Hello, Rolf. It's Lucas. Listen. The nerve of that man. I didn't let him finish and immediately let him have it. You had to take her away from me, right, you narcissistic prick? It wasn't enough you danced with my girl in my house. You really had to steal her from me. Rolf, wait, this is not what you think it is. It never is, isn't it? Stop making excuses. Did you call to gloat, the best man won and all that crap? Would you shut up for a second and let me talk? Rain loves you, not me. Besides, I am married. So you're married, but still you have Rain. Is she your mistress, your lover? What kind of sick game are you two playing? Shut up. I am faithful to my wife. Rain is a friend, just a friend. She was the one who asked me to drive her away from Middletown. Away from you because she was scared. Scared? Of me. I was upset when I saw you two dancing, but I would have never laid a finger on her. We talked and I thought we had sorted things out. That's the reason why she left? Because she was afraid I'd do something to her? I could hear Lucas growling at the other end of the line. You're so frustrating. Could you stop talking nonsense for a minute and listen? I took a deep breath to calm myself down and said, I am listening. Rain loves you, and I think you love her too. The reason she left. I am sorry, this is very upsetting news. He took a deep breath. I think you have the right to know. I think it was wrong leaving you the way she did. The things is, Rain has cancer. What? The pieces started falling into place somewhere in my mind. I sat down trying to take it all in. Did you say cancer? Rain has cancer? I was shocked. My mind went blank. I only remember thinking, why didn't I know about it? Rain was my friend, my lover. I should have known first. Did Rain not consider me a friend enough to tell me about her condition? I was stunned. Was Rain dying? God, I was overwhelmed by so many questions at the same time. I thought you deserved to know the truth, Lucas said on the other side of the line. I don't understand. Stupid words. I knew what Lucas had said, but Rain was young, healthy. It didn't make any sense. I am sorry, man. I struggled to take a breath and fought down a wave of nausea. Thank you for telling me, Lucas. You did the right thing. So how is she? She has cancer, stupid. How do you think she is? Rain starts chemotherapy on Monday. She is not in a good place now. She needs you, even when she is too stubborn to ask for your help. I am here with her, but I can't stay long. I have a business and a family. I would if she was alone, but I am positive she'd rather have you at her side than me. I want to be there for her, Lucas. I love Rain with all my heart. Send me the address of where she is staying. I'll be there as soon as I can. I could hear Lucas' sigh of relief through the line. I knew you would. I'll text you the details. Don't worry about the money. My family is taking care of everything. She needs you for emotional support. Rain asked for me? Not with so many words. What if I show up there and she sends me away? She won't. Trust me. I know Rain. She'll be glad to see you there. She requires all the support she can get. She has a hell of a fight ahead of her. I'll do my best. Thank you, Rolf. You're a good guy. You must be if Rain fell for you. I shook my head. Thank you, Lucas, for being such a good friend to her. Please accept my apologies for overreacting earlier. It's okay, man. I understand more than you know. Rain has that effect on people. She just gets under your skin. As soon as the call ended, tears that I'd fought for days now overflowed. I just cried and cried and cried. Rain's all alone and she needed me. All I wanted was for Rain to be back in my arms. Had I found Rain only to lose her? It was Rolf's voice. I didn't realize I needed to hear his voice so badly. Rolf, OMG, it's you. It's really you. How did you know? Lucas told me about your condition, he interrupted. Please don't be mad at him. He meant well. I wasn't mad at Lucas. I was mad at myself for being a coward and not telling Rolf the truth. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have left as I did. I was thinking about you and how unfair it was for you. And I ran away. It was a shitty thing to do. Rolf came to my side and squeezed my hand. It's okay. Everything is going to be okay. The past is in the past. I am here with you now. How long are you planning on staying here? For as long as it takes. I couldn't hold it any longer, and all the fear, all the frustration, all the turmoil I had lived through the past days finally caught up with me, and I lost it. I was too tired to even try to get a grip on my emotions. There was no stopping the inevitable. Tears escaped, flowing slowly and steadily for several minutes before giving way to huge, soul-racking sobs. Rolf stood there, holding my hand and rubbing my neck with his other hand. He didn't say anything, just sat down and held my hand. He stayed in the chemo room along with me. It was a blessing having him here. His eyes kept darting to the chemo drip hanging from the IV pole beside me. I wondered what was going through his mind. Was it too much to hope that maybe, just maybe, he could look past cancer and see me? Does it hurt? He asked, pointing at the IV with his chin. Not really. I feel a slight burning as the chemo drugs enter my veins. The after effects are the problem. He just nodded, concerned. Lucas rented an apartment for me to stay. He cares about you an awful lot. He does. Lucas is a good friend, Rolf. Just a friend, nothing else. He is happily married. I know. He told me when he called me to inform me what was going on with you. He held my hand to his cheek and kissed it. Why did you have to leave like that? Why didn't you tell me you had cancer? Why didn't you trust me? His expression told me everything I needed to know. How much he loved me. How much he had missed me. I thought it would be easier for you that way. It wasn't a matter of trust. I was also in denial. I just wanted a normal life. Rolf nodded slowly. I gave him a moment to let my explanation sink in. When he spoke, I could feel the anguish in his voice. Do you have any idea what went through my mind when you just vanished? Knowing the reason why we didn't have a future was going to hurt you more. It made sense in my mind at that moment. Why did you tell Lucas and not me? Because Lucas already knew. This isn't the first time. When they discovered I had leukemia, I was staying with him and his family. They took care of me till I was cancer-free. Lucas has been checking on me since then. How long have you had it? I was diagnosed around 1 year ago. I had chemo for almost 6 months, and I went into remission, so my white cell count was back to normal. Sadly, now it's back. I should have told him. He should have found out from me. How can you be so calm? He asked, confused. I am calm because I accept what it is. At least most of the time I gave him a tired smile. I've tried crying, screaming, throwing things, avoiding people. It is what it is. I didn't choose to have cancer, but it happened. Then I decided to live my life to the fullest. Time is a rare commodity. I want to enjoy every single second of it. When I come to die, I don't want to discover that I haven't lived, Rolf said, quoting Thoreau. He didn't cease to amaze me. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you myself. It's okay. I kind of understand your reasons for not telling me. Rolf and I held no more secrets from each other. 1,000 pounds had been lifted from my shoulders. All I wanted, all I needed was to be secure in his arms. I needed him to wash away my fear and tell me everything would be okay. Are you afraid, Rain? No one had ever asked me that before. Not ever. I looked at him to check he was not asking out of politeness, but he returned a steady gaze. So I told him how I truly felt. It comes and goes. People think if you're sick, you become fearless and brave, but you don't. Most of the time, it's like being stalked by a psycho, like I might get shot any second. But sometimes I forget for hours. What things make you forget? Talking with people, doing crazy stuff? When we were exploring the woods or fooling around at the lake, I used to forget for a whole day. Sex helps me a lot too. I winked at him. He gave me a sad smile in return. There was a silence then. My turn. Why are you here? I asked Rolf. Well, before knowing you had cancer, I wanted to find you to get closure. Now things have changed, haven't they? Oh, no, don't go there. I don't want your pity, Rolf. His cheeks colored a deep red. It's not pity, you idiot. Can't you see that I'm here because I love you? I swallowed. You do? I love you with every fiber of my being, Rain. It's just the way it is. Even when I wanted to hate you for leaving me, I couldn't stop loving you. I smiled at him and suddenly everything felt all right. The touch of his hand on my cheek felt like it was all natural to me. Of course, I already knew that Rolf loved me, though it felt good to hear him say the words. It felt really good. I had been living in denial about the depth of my feelings for him. The same thing that I had done with my cancer. I have loved you since that day we danced in the rain. I thought I might have freaked you out. Rolf shook his head. Just the opposite. You're sweet-talking me now. Well, maybe you scared me a little, but in a good way. He giggled. Is there a good way to scare someone? I looked at him curiously. Well, at that moment I wanted to kiss you badly, but I was scared you wouldn't kiss me back, or worse, that you would slap me. I wouldn't have slapped you. I wanted to kiss you too. Slowly he moved his head towards mine, removed his fingers from mine to cradle my face in his hands as gently as he could, and brushed his lips on mine. I increased the pressure until we were no longer just touching lips. It was a long, loving kiss. He finally pulled out and I said, I'm not going to break if you give me a proper kiss, Rolf. I got scared when I came back home and didn't find you. I feel I can't apologize enough for not trusting you. I am so happy you are here. I don't know how I'm going to get through this alone. I wouldn't want to be anyplace else right now. I'm going to stay with you for as long as you need me. You know I work mainly from home, so there's no problem. You mean it? I do. But you've got to get better. You're young, strong. We're going to get through this, I promise. Cancer can be beaten. Well, do it together. I squeezed his hand. The only noise in the room was my quiet sniffles. He ran his fingers through my short hair in silence. I finally sobbed my nose and said, "I'll do my best. I'll give the fight of my lifetime, I promise." Talking about cancer is scary, and usually not something people are comfortable with. Many people avoid the topic whenever they can. My first reaction when Lucas told me Rain had cancer was shock. I felt at a loss for words. My world was flipped upside down. Nothing seemed to matter anymore. I quickly set my things in order and left Middletown without knowing when I was going to come back. I didn't tell anyone about Rain's cancer. I knew she would have wanted it that way. I simply told people I was going to look for her. Before flying to be with Rain, I had read every single article about helping someone with cancer on the internet. There was a lot of obvious suggestions like listening more than talking, avoid crying in your friend's presence, and avoid pitying looks or behaviors. I shouldn't offer empty words of comfort like "you're lucky it's X cancer" instead of Y cancer. It's God will, or everything is going to be okay. A helpful recommendation was that every cancer patient was different, and they needed or wanted support in many ways. The best way to help was to ask Rain if there were things I could do to help her. I had keep things normal. Don't skirt around the issue, but don't let cancer to be the issue. It was important to make sure I was in a place of peace before the visit. I thought long and hard about all my feelings for Rain during my flight to Phoenix. I was going to make sure Rain knew that I loved her no matter what. I wasn't going to bail on her, even if she didn't love me back. Whatever time Rain had left, I wanted to share it with her. She was my friend, and she had done a lot for me. She was probably scared and needed support. I was going to be at her side no matter what. I knew it was going to be painful watching her going through her treatment. I had to be strong for her. If we were to have any hope of defeating Rain's cancer, we had to stay positive. Plenty of people have beaten cancer. I knew Rain would fight. I knew she wasn't ready to die, and I wasn't ready to lose her. Very soon, Rain and I set into a pattern with chemotherapy sessions. I would drive Rain to the hospital, stayed with her, sitting in the chair beside her, my laptop open as I worked whilst the drugs traveled into her body. Rain would open her survival bag, an aromatherapy oil roller to dab onto her right wrist, a great antidote to the clinical smell of the ward, and her phone and headphones to get into her own world. She told me meditating helped her, so I usually get some work done, unless she was in a talking mood, and she sat for the whole round telling me things she said I needed to know. On her chemo day, Rain ate lightly, so I carried a bag with crackers, oatmeal, plain yogurt, and cold drinks such as iced tea or orange juice. After chemo, I would drive her back to the apartment Lucas had rented for us and helped her to bed. I offered Lucas to pay some rent, but he absolutely refused to take my money. I should be paying you for being there for Rain. Lucas, I am here because I love Rain. I know. You have my absolute respect for what you're doing. Listen, Rolf, anything you need, anything at all, I am just a call away. When this is over, we'll talk about hiring you for our family business. We need a new webpage and someone to manage it. Lucas was a stand-up guy. To think I wanted to punch him in the face not long ago. Slowly, over time, Rain fell into a routine. For the first few days following a chemotherapy session, she was ill. Then slowly, she began to feel better, and by the time the next session came around a week later, she was almost back to feeling her normal self, only for it to start all over again. If Rain felt fine, she wanted to cook dinner for us. Usually, she had no appetite, so I cooked just for myself. She had lost all her hair again, but she refused to wear a wig because she believed in her heart and in her soul that she would have hair again. How many treatments are left? I've got 7 at the moment and then a break. I'm into my 4th, so only 3 left. She tried to keep her voice light and optimistic, but knew she failed. There was hardly a way to say she was having life-saving treatment, having poison pumped through her veins every week and sound upbeat. You need a bone marrow transplant. I know, trust me. The big question is whether they'll ever find the right donor, said Rain, exhaling a long sigh. We couldn't find one so far. I had read some facts about bone marrow transplant BMT on the internet. How you come out of the BMT depends on the skill of the transplant medical team, your attitude, and a good match for bone marrow. We were in one of the top national centers for BMT, and Dr. Brown was leading a great team, so we had the first base covered. Rain had some weak moments during her treatment. There were many nights when she cried herself to sleep while I held her in my arms. But she never gave up. She never lost hope. She was a true fighter. All her energy was focused on beating her cancer. so we had second base covered too. Third base, however, was a very difficult one to cover. 70% of the people who need a bone marrow transplant can find a donor whose bone marrow is a good match. Imagine being in that situation. The doctors know that they can save your life, but they can't find the bone marrow to save it with. The closer the donor is to an exact copy of you, the greater the chances that the new bone marrow and your body will be able to live with one another. Rain didn't have any close relatives or siblings. Finding a marrow match was going to be very, very, very hard. Almost impossible. Test me. I'll do it, I said to Dr. Brown. Sadly, I wasn't a match. Fate was pounding at Rain's door. It was loud, impatient, and pounding mercilessly on a door she had kept locked for a year. It was time to let fate know he wasn't welcomed and fight back. I needed more people in our corner. People with huge hearts willing to fight with us. Luckily for us, I knew exactly where to find them. There was one person I knew who would be able to reach Middletown's heart. I took my phone out and made the call. Hello, Grace. It's Rolf. Yes, I am calling you precisely about her. Yes, I found her. No, sadly, she is not well. Listen, I need your help. I rubbed rouge onto my cheeks, considered my reflection in the mirror, and frowned. I was pale and thin, and my eyes, which I used to think were too big for my face anyhow, were now massive, with pale purple shadows underneath. I looked sick, but there was not a lot I could do about that. I was sick. I had one more treatment left, one more session of having the horrible, cold poison pumped through my veins, one more round of the vomiting, the shaking, the nausea, the tiredness, and then I was done with chemotherapy and could start living whatever time I had left again. How we choose to react in a crisis is referred to as fight or flight. Stand your ground or run to the hills. After the initial shock, I made up my mind I was up for the fight. However, not every day was positive, far from it. There were days when I seemed very lost in a long, dark tunnel with nothing but a dim, barely flickering light ahead. I had two choices: dive under the duvet, carry on crying and feel helpless, or get back and fight each time I got knocked down. A couple of times I chose the former. Mostly I picked the latter. I held on to that light. I trusted that it would eventually burn brighter and that I'd be out of the tunnel. Rolf was generous in his offer of help. He fought at my side, but he wasn't sitting where I was. This was my fight, and no one, not even him, could have it for me. My weight dropped, and my face grew thinner and paler. Then my eyelashes and my eyebrows fell out too, and I felt bare, exposed, and sick whenever I looked at myself in the mirror. It is said that Winston Churchill remarked during the Battle of Dunkirk, "If you're going through hell, keep going." This was my war on cancer. I couldn't go back, and there was no escape. I had to keep going. Another mantra that helped me was Abraham Lincoln's "one day at a time." On bleak days, I'd remind myself not to look back, as there was no point. I wasn't going to look too far ahead and think that the worst was going to happen. Instead, I just dealt with the here and now. Just get through today, then try again tomorrow. When I was made aware that BMT was the only chance I had to defeat cancer, I felt hurt, confused, depressed, and helpless. I never knew my biological parents. I was all alone in the world with no blood family. It wasn't long before I realized that these emotions were like highly contagious germs. They not only infected me, but also infected Rolf, the nurses, the doctor, and all of those who cared about me. After my first chemo, I left the hospital. With a bag of anti-sickness drugs, I was handed a pack of retractable needles and a sharp spin. Following chemotherapy, I would need to inject myself daily with medication to boost my white blood cell count, which would have been impacted by chemo. When I got to the apartment, I retreated to the bedroom and locked the door. I pinched my thigh skin, as instructed, injected, and quickly popped a chocolate mint in my mouth to confuse my senses, while I put the used needle in the yellow sharps box hidden in my wardrobe. Julia, the nurse, called the next day to make sure I was okay, which I was, though I never got used to it. I was feeling down and extremely blue. Rolf sensed when I wasn't feeling well. He sat at my side, put an arm around me, kissed me temple, and asked, "Do you want to talk about what's troubling you?" I sighed. I can't stop asking myself why. What terrible thing could I have possibly done to deserve this karmic payback? I don't have an answer for that. You know I'm not a religious person. Bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people, and sometimes it's just no one's fault. Instead of asking yourself why, focus on what you can do to get well. Rolf closed his arms around me and I buried my face in his chest. "I am so afraid," I whispered. "Do you know what I see when I look at you? A bald cancer patient? I said, trying to make a joke. No, silly girl. When I look at you, I see a brave woman fighting for her life. Someone taking control of her destiny and ready to kick cancer's ass. You can beat this. We can beat this. I feel like my world is unraveling. I don't feel optimistic right now, Rolf. Your optimism has been beaten down. I get it. We'll find it again. I won't let you quit. I looked into his eyes. Why? He rolled his eyes. Because I love you. You have changed me in so many ways. You're too important to me to let you quit. I sat up and straddled him. I love you too. The words shocked me. I hadn't consciously decided to say them, but I know they were true the moment they fall from my lips. I love you too, I said again, needing to hear the words. A wide smile spreads across Rolf's lips. I love you, Rain. I love you with all my heart. Rolf kissed my lips gently and lovingly. When we broke the kiss, I asked him, what about tomorrow and the day after tomorrow? Rolf cupped my face in his palms and pressed his forehead against mine. The muscles in his face tensed. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. What I do know is that I'm happy with you today. I love you, my love. He swallowed. I'm even happier knowing that you love me too. Are we going to be fine? I asked. Stop stressing yourself, my love. Everything is going to be fine. We are a team. You're not doing this on your own. I wish I had your faith. You do. Rolf was right. Even on the toughest days during my treatment, I had no intention of surrendering to my diagnosis. I couldn't change it, but I could certainly be the decision maker in how I handled it. It was time to be proactive and do all I could to live as much of my life as possible for the good of my physical and mental health. When I could get into the gym, I worked on building up my strength, most of the time with Rolf, sometimes alone. Rolf had my back, but he didn't intrude on my private time. He had some spidey sense to know when I needed company and when I wanted to be alone. Always with a nod from the gym staff and gym buddies, who very soon became good acquaintances. Sometimes, I'd sit on a bike and pedal slowly for 10 minutes until I was exhausted, but it was more than I had done the day before. That was progress. The next day I would pedal again and maybe try a bit of rowing or lift some light weights. I'd build myself up until the next chemo dose took me back to square one. I was telling all this to a lady having her chemo not far from me. We started talking and very soon we became close. She turned to me one day and said, "Well, if you're doing all this, I'll suppose I have to try it myself. I am not so old for the gym. Maybe with luck a hot gym instructor will squeeze my buns," and winked, which made me smile. One day I was back in the chemo ward having another dose of poison fed into my arm. Rolf kept looking at me and smiling as if he knew something I didn't. Then he got a text, read it, and stood up saying, "I need to go out for a minute. Don't go anywhere. Ha ha, very funny." Minutes later, a group of people entered the ward, shepherded in by Rolf. Almost immediately, I started recognizing their faces. There was Theodore, Mrs. Rowland, Laura and Percy, and most of his crew. At their side, I saw Aunt Molly and her husband, John. I had visited their farm more than once. His son, Red, and his wife, Kat, were at his side. They had offered me a job as a waitress at their restaurant. Behind them, I could see Daniel and Georgina, Diana and Steve, and Derek with Bella. In front of the lot, there was Grace, the realtor with whom I went to see houses and exchanged gossip more than once. We had become very good friends. Her husband, Landon, was an ex-soldier, and they were inseparable, just like Rolf and me. What a lovely surprise. "What are you all doing here?" I asked. I looked at Rolf and he winked at me. I wanted to cover my face because I suddenly became conscious that I had no hair, no eyebrows, no eyelashes. "This is not a social visit, Rain," Grace said. "We all came here to get tested. There are more of us waiting at Middletown for their turn. The private jet can hold up only up to 20 passengers. You what?" The enormity of what Grace was saying was still sinking in my mind. Sobbing uncontrollably, I only kept repeating what she just said, unable to say anything else. Private jet? Get tested? More of you? Everyone was smiling at me. I gently wiped away my tears with the palm of my hands. I don't know what to say. "Thank you would be appropriated," Rolf suggested. I pointed a finger at him in mocked anger. "It was you. You called them. You sneaky bastard." Everyone laughed and he nodded. "Well, it was my idea, but everyone jumped in when they knew that you needed us. When Grace told Middletown what was going on, everyone volunteered. Lucas paid for a private jet to bring all of them here and a hotel room for their stay." I frowned. "How many people are we talking about exactly?" "Hundreds," Grace chimed in. Almost everyone in Middletown wants to help. There is a second group ready to come if none from the first group is a match, and a third, and a fourth, and they'll keep coming till we find a match," Molly added and smiled at me. Watching them there, all willing to help, all smiling at me and giving me hope, I completely lost it. I cried so hard I could hardly even breathe. Why? Why would any of you do this for me? I asked, still in tears. You said you had no family, Rolf said, sitting at my side and rubbing the back of my neck. But you are wrong. Family isn't blood. Family is the people who love you, the people who have your back. Rain, you are very, very loved, and you have a very large family in your corner. You're one of us, Rain, Mrs. Rowland said. You showed us love and kindness, Theodore added. Lots of heads nodded in approval. Rolf leaned down and kissed my lips, and I wrapped one arm around his neck, kissing him back. I could hear my friends, my newfound family, cheering till Julia came to usher them out of the ward. Small town, big hearts, Never Better said. When the chemotherapy was over, Dr. Brown's secretary called Rain and told her that he had some news for her. Of course, we spent most of the night awake, agonizing over what he might need to tell her. She kept asking herself if it was her time to go, and she kept coming to the same conclusion. I refused to give up, no matter what news Dr. Brown has to deliver. I kissed her scalp and held her against me. Everything is going to be okay. Whatever doubts I had, I kept them to myself. Her body was thin and cold. I pressed her against my chest, hoping my warmth would somehow sink into her. I love you, Rain, I whispered. I'm a damn idiot for not telling you when you lived with me. I love you. I love you too. Finally, morning came, and my gaze was drawn to the window. Golden rays streamed into the bedroom. I gently shook her awake. It's sunrise, Rain. Can you see it? I choked out the words. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I had to stay brave for her. It's beautiful. My love. I drove her to Dr. Brown's office. His secretary let us into his private office immediately. We sat down in front of his desk, our eyes fixed on him with anxious stares. I have some news for you, Dr. Brown said. Rain's grip tightened on my hand. Your blood test results are good, he informed us with a smile. We both let out a loud sigh of relief. Finally, some good news. I have some more good news. The doctor's smile turned wider. We have found a match among your Middletown friends. Rain began to cry happy tears. I was crying too. We both hugged each other and cried. Rain was crying, I was crying, and then we looked into our eyes for a few seconds, and we both laughed aloud. Thank you, Rain said, wiping at her eyes. Thank you so much. Who is the donor? Dr. Brown checked at his papers. A woman called Janice Cooper. She is young and healthy, and she more than willing to help. It's not often we find a non-relative match so close by. This means we can do a transfusion, and hopefully put you into full remission with a very small chance of recurrence. Rain and I hugged again. We need to wait a few weeks, the good doctor continued, and then we can get started. We both nodded. When we left, it felt as if we were floating. It's almost over, Rain said. That's it, I agreed. As soon as we were in the car, we hugged and kissed and laughed again. Then Rain picked up her phone and called Lucas to give him the good news. She put him on speaker. Everything's okay? Lucas sounded like he was holding his breath. Yes, in fact, everything is more than great. The doctor said my blood work looks really good. The chemo worked. Yay, that's great news, guys. Lucas cheered through the speaker. He also said that she choked on her words. So overwhelmed and teary, they found a bone marrow match. Oh, wow. Wow. Rain. Lucas was sobbing now. We feel just so happy, so relieved. We wanted to share the good news with you. I'm so glad for you, Lucas said in a shaky voice after a long moment. So glad. We will celebrate when this is over. You and Rolf should come to Austria. Rain looked at me and I nodded in approval. We will. Thank you, Lucas, I said. We still have a long way ahead of us, but it seems we are closer to the light at the end of the tunnel. Of course, Rolf. Thank you for being there for Rain. I wouldn't want to be anyplace else. I love her, and for some crazy reason, it turns out she loves me back. Crazy reasons and Rain walk hand in hand, Lucas said with a laugh. Rain giggled at my side. It's great news. It's really great news. I'll let you celebrate. Please keep me updated. The second call was to Janice Cooper. I looked for the Gazette number on the internet. She was nice and insisted there was no need to thank her. We both got the impression that she actually felt uncomfortable with the attention. so we kept the call short. No matter how she felt, she had made 2 friends for life. The bone marrow transplant was a success. I survived the observation period and my body was rapidly recovering. This was just another step in a long, slow process that would test our faith, hope, and love. "You're all right now, Rain," Dr. Brown told us with a smile. "You're 100% cancer-free. Enjoy your life." I had broken all hospital records for quick recovery from the transplant. I closed my arms around the good doctor's neck and kissed his cheek, making him blush. "Thank you, doctor, for everything you did." I longed to hear this news, and I still can't believe I don't have this monkey on my back anymore. Rolf and I were over the moon. It felt like a weight had been lifted from our heads, and we could start to look forward to the future again. "Are you going to stop running now?" he asked. I pretended to think, "No, but I'll do it only if you come with me. You're stuck with me for life, Rolf." "That's a life sentence I can live with," he said, kissing me. Middletown organized a night beach party for us when we finally got back to town. The bonfire was set up in a secluded section of the beach, a small bay sheltered by rockfall and bushes called Lover's Beach. When we arrived, the fire was already blazing and all of our friends were there. I got a lot of hugs, tears, kisses, and cheers. Someone had dragged logs close by the fire and people were sitting on them, warming themselves by the heat as twilight descended. Music played from some speakers nearby, although it wasn't loud, more like soft world music, the kind of music I loved. The sound of chatter and laughter filled the air. Janice was there too, and I making my way across the sand to her. I stood in front of her, and I pulled her into a tight hug, wrapping my arms around her and pressing my lips to her cheek. "Thank you. I owe you my life. Whatever you need, you have made a friend for life." You're welcome. Let me interview you for the Gazette, and you can call us even." I could tell Janice was obviously uncomfortable with the hug. She allowed it just for a few seconds, and then she drew back. I was hugged and petted and kissed until I felt like a newborn baby, as delighted as a small child on her birthday. "Welcome back, Rain," was said over and over and over again. "What are your plans now?" Rolf and I hadn't talked about the future yet. We loved each other and that was fine for us. We had gotten used to enjoying one day at a time. I plan on staying here with Rolf. I finally found a home in Middletown. Someone handed me a beer and then someone else made a toast to me, reiterating my good news. I smiled and sipped my drink. Rolf was taken to the side by Daniel and his friends. I sat by the fire on one of the logs. Tanya sat down beside me and offered a small smile. I shifted uncomfortably, remembering the last time I had spoken to Tanya at Theodore's store. "Sorry to hear about your cancer," Tanya said quite abruptly. "I didn't know at that time. I'm glad you're okay." "Thanks, I guess," I replied warily, although it's not my cancer. "Oh yeah, sorry. Wrong choice of words, I guess." I nodded, doing my best to ignore her. People didn't know what to say, and cancer made them awkward and uncomfortable. I understood that. "So you and Rolf are a thing?" "Yes, we are. We are in love. He's sure acting like you're the greatest couple ever. I don't care about other couples, but we went through so much together, and that created a strong bond between us." Tanya twisted her mouth but remained silent. If anything good came from all this, it's that we learned to appreciate the simple joys in life. "Well, you're getting a lot of attention from it." I shook my head in disbelief. "Do you think I got sick to get attention?" The very thought made me feel ill. "No, but I think you used it to come between me and Rolf." "Tanya!" Tanya jumped at the sound of her name. "What are you doing?" Janice demanded, her voice filled with anger. She moved past me to confront Tanya. "Rolf is not interested in you," Janice said, poking Tanya's chest with each word. "Janice, get out of this party," she said firmly. "If I see you near Rain again, I'll make sure you regret it." Tanya's face flushed as she left, hurt and fearful. Once Tanya was gone, Janice hugged me tightly. "I can't believe she said that," she murmured. "I can't believe anyone would say something like that. She's just jealous. I guess she always thought there was something more between her and Rolf." I smiled at Janice. "Thank you, Janice, for everything." We held each other tightly. "Listen, I need to talk to you," she said, glancing around alone. I looked around too and said, "No time like the present." She licked her lips, looked into my eyes, took a deep breath and said, "When the doctors told me that I was a match, and they informed me about the odds of something like that happening, I asked them to run a DNA test." Janice made a pause to lick her lips again. "And?" I asked. my heart thumping in my chest. It turns out we are related. We are half-sisters. I looked at her, not knowing what to say. When you called me to thank me, I was processing the news. I still am. Right now, I'm in shock. Do you have any idea how is this possible? Janice moved her head up and down slowly. I can make an educated guess. My dad traveled a lot because of his work. Not only the US, but Europe and South America too. I know for a fact that he was unfaithful to my mother several times before the divorce. So, do you think he had sex with some woman during his travels, got her pregnant and left? Knowing my father, it's quite possible. He liked them young, so don't be too hard with your biological mother if you ever find her. Are you still in touch with your father? No. My parents divorced when I was 13, and he became just a check in the mail. He never answered any of my letters. Last thing I heard, he was living someplace in South America. So you are my sister, I shrieked in a high-pitched voice. Janice made me a gesture to keep my voice down. Please keep it between us. I need to tell Rolf. Okay, but only to him. I pulled Janice into my arms and held her close. She was surprised and tense at first, but then relaxed and hugged me back. After a few minutes, I sensed and then recognized the familiar body of Rolf beside me. We broke the hug and Janice left without saying a word. Still showing your gratitude? Yeah, but this was about something else too. I'll tell you about it when we get home. I didn't say anything else, staring out over the black water, at the multitude of stars dotting the night sky. Rolf was quiet, obviously understanding that I didn't feel quite like talking yet. I liked that about him, his ability to sense when I needed quiet, when I needed company, when I needed to be touched, and when I needed to talk. I glanced at Rolf out of the corner of my eye. Suddenly, I wanted his arms around me. Turning around, I stepped into his arms, and he immediately wrapped them around me. I clung to him, pressing my face into his chest and inhaling deeply. He smelled like Rolf, warm, masculine, minty, and fresh. And he was warm. Rain? I tilted my head back and looked up at him. The white of his eyes glowed in the darkness, and I could make out the concerned frown that marred his expression. I love you. Rolf, I whispered. I want you. Let's get out of here, he growled, and I recognized the flare of desire in the shadows of his eyes. Now, before I take you here on the beach, I giggled. Is that supposed to be a treat? Now who is the adventurous one? I've tried something similar before, and let me tell you, it's overrated. Too much sand. I briefly wondered if I should have mentioned that, but he just replied, too many people around for that. Tonight, I want to take you to our bed. Sounds good to me. What are we waiting for? Draping an arm around my shoulder, Rolf led me up the beach, past the bonfire, into his car. As soon as we reached our place, I leaned over to kiss him, then moved across to his lap, straddling him. My hands cupped his face as I kissed him, lowering myself so I could feel him, hard and ready, through his jeans. Rolf's hands moved up under my shirt, and he reached around to unhook my bra before gently holding my chest. My heart raced as he touched me. Rolf, I whispered against his mouth through heated kisses. I need you. He grinned, but didn't break the contact of our mouths or take his hands away. Grinning back, I lifted myself, positioned us, and slowly slid down, feeling the warmth between us. Rolf held onto my hips, guiding me, as he continued to kiss me deeply. I moved slowly, savoring the moment, our desire growing with every motion. More, more, he urged, his fingers gripping my hips. Yes, I picked up the pace, moving harder and deeper against him, feeling the connection between us intensify. Rolf. He murmured, his mouth on my earlobe. He let me set the rhythm, taking what I needed while giving him exactly what he craved. My hands clutched his shoulders as I continued to move with him. Rolf felt my climax building and lifted his hips, urging me on, whispering my name, knowing I was close. I wanted him closer, so I wrapped my legs around him and ran my hands over his back, pulling him deeper into me. It felt as though my heart and soul were one, my whole body overwhelmed by the sensation. Like a stone dropped in water, waves of emotion rippled through me. Rolf pulled back to watch as I lost myself in the moment, and then we both surrendered to the intense pleasure. I held him close, amazed at what we shared, feeling so fortunate to be with him in this moment. He stroked my hair and face, kissing away my tears. I was alive, blessed to be here with him. After a while, as our breathing returned to normal, I tried to move, but he held me close. "No," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Please stay. Stay with me. I will. You're my home." Epilogue. 1 year later, your hair has come back so beautifully, Rolf said. So different from how it was. I turned to look at the wavy blonde hair that now reached almost to my chin. It's lighter and curly. It never had a wave before. "It's going to be gorgeous as it grows longer," Rolf observed. And then a thought suddenly crossed my mind. "I want it as long as it goes," I admitted. I hated being bald the first time. It didn't seem so bad this time, although I'll be glad if I never have to go through chemo ever again. I had been in remission ever since. I still saw Dr. Brown regularly, but he told me he didn't expect cancer to ever return, although you can never say never. In the meantime, Rolf and I are living our lives together, making plans and enjoying ourselves. There is too much we want to do, too much we wanted to see and experience. Rolf embraced my desire to live and experience every single moment. One day, he asked me to marry him at the top of a mountain. I said yes, of course. When the news spread around that we were going to get married, everyone in town wanted to help one way or another. We are family, after all. Today, Rolf and I are going to say our vows, down on the beach, surrounded by our friends. Lucas, his wife, and his family flew from Austria to share this moment with us. Rolf's parents traveled from Florida, especially for our day. We invited the whole town to our wedding. Every person brought their tables, chairs, and food. Today will definitely be unforgettable. "Rain," Janice said, popping her head into the room. "Are you ready?" "Absolutely." I followed Janice out and down to the waiting car. I had asked Janice to be my maid of honor. I won't take no for an answer. It turns out she didn't want to say no. She cried and said yes. She was the best maid of honor I could have ever chosen. "What kind of wedding shower do you want?" she asked me. "What?" "Your wedding shower. That thing the maid of honor throws where you get a lot of stuff you don't need and will never use but have to write thank you cards for? You know what it is, right?" I shook my head. "Maybe we can skip that." She was going to scratch the item on her list, but I stopped her. "No, a wedding shower sounds great. For the last months, I've been living with Rolf in his house, but I want to spend the night away from him with the girls. There is nothing traditional about my relationship with Rolf or our wedding, but I want a traditional wedding shower. We had a lot of clean fun, and it helped me to deal with my pre-wedding jitters. They came rushing back to me when we arrived at the beach a few minutes later. I was really doing this. We were really doing this, and I began to feel all hot and itchy. "Oh my, you look gorgeous, child," Theodore said when I walked down to the beach access. He was going to walk me down the aisle. Well, there was no actual aisle, but you get the idea. "She does." "Let's go, Rain," Janice said. "We don't want Rolf to think you aren't coming." A million what-ifs suddenly crammed themselves into my mind, and for a long moment I stood there, my bare feet sinking into the sand. I was afraid to face cancer again. I was afraid that the next time I might not win. Rolf needed more than that. He needed someone who would be there forever. He needed someone who could give him lots of babies and a happy house and security. I couldn't give him those things, and I'd want him to have them. The doctors had informed me that having children was no longer an option. Rolf had sat with me when they explained it to me, and he'd held my hand and then held me afterward as the reality of the situation washed over me. I'd never be able to give Rolf a child, never be able to create a miniature Rolf. Would he be okay with that in the long run? Would he eventually need to find someone who could give him everything I couldn't? Rolf, being Rolf though, had assured me that he was okay with it all. Besides, there were other options available to us that we could explore in the future. "There is no one else," he whispered, holding me in his arms. "It doesn't matter how hard you try to keep my heart safe. It's already yours. I love you as you are. I accept that you come with risks. I want you anyway. I am never, ever going to let you go. I'm here for the long haul, through sickness and health and all that comes with it. Do you hear me? He wanted me. I wanted him. It was as simple as that." "And I keep pushing you away," I whispered, "because you're afraid, because you think you're not enough. But you are, Rain, because there is no one else for me but you. There never has been, not since the day we met," I heard Rolf's voice in my mind. "Rain?" I glanced up to see Janice hovering at my side, a concerned expression locked on her features. "Everything's okay?" I looked back down the beach just as Rolf turned and saw me standing there. He had dressed in navy blue pants and a crisp white shirt. His hair, which had grown longer, was neatly brushed back from his face, and his beard, which he'd also grown over the past few months, was trimmed. And his eyes. The moment his eyes lit on me, any doubts, any hesitation I might have had were extinguished because in his eyes I saw everything I'd ever been looking for. Someone who loves me, cherishes me, and adores me. Someone who embraces everything that life had to offer. Someone who makes my knees weak and my stomach do flip-flops. Someone who'll have my back. Always. Without any more second thoughts, I made my way down the beach to where Rolf waited, a huge smile stretching across my face and my heart fuller than it had ever been before. Theodore squeezed my hand. "Are you okay, my child?" "Everything is great." I smiled at Theodore and Janice, and they smiled back at me. "Then, let's get you married." "You've kept Rolf waiting long enough," said Theodore. Janice started walking in front of us. A few seconds later, I started to walk down to the shore to where Rolf waited. I only saw Rolf, so tall and dashing in his tuxedo. Rolf, who had danced with me in the rain. Rolf, who faced his biggest fear because of me. Rolf, who had been so very sure of us when I hadn't even been sure of myself. Rolf, who walked through hell at my side. He is my lifetime love, my soulmate. His lips began to curve, and so did mine until we were both smiling brilliantly at each other. I was no longer afraid. Instead, I was looking forward to our future together, no matter what it held for us. All my fighting led me here. I don't want to be anywhere else. I have my new family around me, the man I love at my side. It can't get any better than this. I stood at his side and my hand was placed inside his, warm and secure. And when the minister asked, my answer was as crystal as a bell. I do.